Today, we're getting back to Metallica, and for the very first time, I'm listening to their first album. This is Kill 'Em All. Whiplash! Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another album review / reaction here on my channel. We've just had a little difficulty recording this intro, which is why Chris is laughing, which is totally fine. If you're watching this video and you're unfamiliar with my channel and this is the first video you've seen, welcome, first of all. I'm glad you're here. You're probably here for Metallica, so just know we have a bunch of other Metallica videos on my channel. If you haven't been following along with us this year, I have not heard a vast majority of Metallica's catalog, and so starting at the beginning of the year, I went through and listened to Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All with my friend Chris Schoenberg, a different Chris than this Chris, which this is Chris Parker. Let's have our things pop up
the
here.
OG. The OG.
Yeah. Let's have our name tags pop up here.
Yep.
We're so dumb.
Yep.
Anyway, I did 3 videos with my friend Chris Schoenberg, and then I have Chris Parker here with me now, but all 3 of us, Chris Schoenberg, Chris Parker, and myself, then reacted to the Black Album, and then we all did 72 Seasons as well, the night it was released and the night it came out. And so since we most recently did the most recent Metallica album, now we're going to go back in time and do the very first Metallica album. Now, one thing I want to say right away is the reason that we decided not to start with this album, which I think would probably be the most logical thing to do with this sort of a project, was when I started doing these reactions, I didn't necessarily anticipate reacting to every Metallica album. However, I've been having so much fun with it, and I've been getting so many views on all these videos, which is just shocking to me, because when I normally upload a video, like the one I uploaded a couple days ago, it gets 80 views. When we upload a Metallica video, it gets 2,000 to like 10,000 views on our Metallica, or our 72 Seasons video.
There's a group. I occasionally wander through YouTube looking for reactions to Metallica stuff too, and every time I do, it's just, there's just this wandering group of Metallica reacting fans, and it's like, I don't know, it's just such an odd thing. The other Chris said that, obviously it wasn't me, that he said that it's really also very true for Tool as well. Yep, and
that's what I do with Nightwish as well. The Nightwish Army, the Nightwish Army is what they're called. They go and comment, and so first of all, if you're a big Metallica fan and you followed our other videos, thank you very much. Like I said, if this is your first video, I'm really excited to go back and do Metallica's first album, because we skipped that one, and I've heard everything up to Black Album, and then obviously plus 72 Seasons. So I'm excited to go back and hear where it all started. And I believe, right, Chris, did Cliff Burton, did he play bass on Ride the Lightning?
Yep, everything.
After
Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Puppets, and then died the day before I was born in 1986.
Interesting.
And then they had stuff that he had worked on, but that was the last album that he had any what's it called?
Input on?
I guess I'll say influence on, because I can't think of the word, but yeah.
Okay.
Input, I suppose.
And Justice, of course, famously the album with very little bass, because the guys didn't feel comfortable having Jason Newsted and his parts be too loud in the song. So, okay. So I'm excited to go back to, now we've listened to several albums now without Cliff, so I'm excited to go back to having Cliff be in the band again. And I guess before we get too far into Metallica, I just want to say that in the description of this video, I will include timestamps, so you probably noticed that on the timeline. There's all the different sections. Feel free to skip around, watch whatever you want. We're going to listen to the entire video, and because I have a guest with me, what we're going to probably do, I found that this works better. When I'm by myself, I just kind of talk through a whole album and don't really stop too much, but since I have a guest with me doing this reaction, what we'll probably do is listen to the song, maybe talk a little bit over the music, but then we'll do a majority of the talking in between songs, and generally talk about the album as a whole, but also just the song we just listened to. So that's sort of, if you're looking at the different sections on the timeline, that can give you a little better grasp of what each thing is. And then after we're done with the song, or with the album as a whole, we'll talk about it a little bit as a whole, but I feel like we'll talk a lot between the songs. So I don't know if we'll have to do too much conversation after we're done listening to the album, but Those will be the general sections. Also in the description of this video, I will include a link to listen to this album on Spotify just by yourself. And I'll include any other links to listen to it if I can find other good ones, like if I can find a good Linktree one on Metallica's website or something. But I'm sure they're just focused on 72 seasons right now. But if I have to upload this video without the audio in it, no, you can like sync it up with us. I'll try to make it as easy as possible to sync up with us. And I'll try to do a countdown at the beginning of each song, not just for that purpose, but also for Chris to start his copy, because we're going to be listening to it separately. So hopefully the audio stuff works out, though. Metallica's been really great in all these videos in terms of letting people use their music on YouTube videos like this. So fingers crossed it works for this one as well.
Do you sidechain our tracks on the edits?
No. Like sidechain compression?
Yeah, just so it, pops down the music a little bit when we talk and comes back up.
I do have, and I shouldn't say this because people technically listening to the video would be like, well, it's not technically the pure audio then. I do put an effect on the master bus, the output, that would maybe do that a little bit, but for the most part, I don't do that.
Sure.
I know some reactors do, and I feel like because we are blessed with having good microphones, good equipment, I'm a good audio engineer. I know, seriously, like
keep in mind that we spent over an hour making this stream work.
That's the stream. That if you were here in person, we'd have had it right away. That's just the internet being stupid and us being stupid with the internet. That has nothing to do with audio. I mean, it does, but yeah. But anyway, I feel like my reactions sound pretty good. So the only thing that's a huge bummer to me is when I have to upload a video that doesn't have the audio from the album in it, so that the person watching the video can't hear the album. That is such a huge bummer for me.
I agree.
And I just had to do it recently on my channel with the Ellie Goulding album, which I really loved the album a lot. And I feel like, it's awkward if me as a person sifting through everything on YouTube, watching a reaction video, I would never I would never pull up a song on my phone or something and listen to it simultaneously with the video. That's a layer of extra work. I would never do that. I generally consume YouTube on a television, though, so usually I'm relaxing and watching YouTube.
That's fair. That makes sense.
And so if I was on my computer, maybe it'd be a little different. I could just open Spotify
just pop open
and
a second tab.
But so it'd be hard for me. So I understand that, but it's super awkward, I assume, to listen to my videos like that, just breathing and dancing along to nothing, But unfortunately, it is what it is. You can only do what you can do with the copyrights, but. If you are watching this video and you've made it through this crazy clunky intro here, and this is your first time, thank you for being with us. Know that generally I am a person that tends to focus on production side of music. I don't generally tend to break down lyrics or anything like that. I don't connect with music on a personal level like that generally. And so I'll be talking about production a lot. However, I will definitely say with this album, I'm going to have my expectations, try to set my expectations correctly, so that I'm going to be expecting a band's first album, which generally is their worst sounding album. At least in the case of metal and rock bands, I feel like sometimes
especially older stuff.
Yeah, with a pop, it's interesting because with a pop star though, their first album might actually be their best one, because that was the one.
LaRue.
Well, because that's the one where the record label was like, okay, we got this new talent, let's put a bunch of money into them. They make this incredible album, and if it doesn't sell the way they want it to, then it's up to the artist to go on and further their career. They might not have that backing and that financial support. So, but with a metal band like this, this is the thing that got Metallica noticed, I assume, and then that's what allowed Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets to be made, and made so well for the style of music and the time that it was made. At least that's what I'm assuming. So I will say that we are going to be listening to the 2016 remaster of Kill 'Em All. We've been listening to remasters thus far, and I think that we're going to stick with that. I do have Load and Reload on CDs, so when we get to those, which I think Chris and I are going to be doing those next, after we're in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing Load. My plan for this, Chris, is to actually listen to the CD.
Great.
So I'll just rip the CD and we'll listen to those files. Maybe we could compare and contrast the remasters. I don't know, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Before we get to Metallica, though, I want to do something that is going to be a little interesting. I want to do a little show and tell for people. I do this sometimes on my channel, and I know people don't like it sometimes, and they're like, just cut this out and have it be a separate video. So skip this if you don't want to hear me talking about stuff that's not Metallica for the next 5 minutes or so. But yesterday, my mother and I, whom I love dearly, we went to some garage sales nearby, and I ended up buying a few cool things. And so I just want to go through and show those real quick. The first thing I have here, and Chris, you'll really appreciate this. I love sound effects records, sound effects vinyl.
Interesting. Boy, that's interesting. I want to hear everything on that.
I know, right? I know. Now, the cool thing about this one is this is actually like music. So it's music sound effects. So like the first one it's Matador music. Then we have like Theodore music. We have voice. And then here's a wagon, war sound effects, motorcycles for a minute. I don't even know what some of this stuff is at all. There's a polka. There's some different body songs and backroom ballads. Volume 4.
So is this just like open domain, public domain music? Basically?
I don't think so. It says on here what they are. They're all like BMI and ASCAP like from. So like
okay.
But there's also like war sound effects and motorcycle sound effects and bugle calls. But then there's also
I want it.
There's also music stuff. Yeah, I really like. I don't know if I can even fit this whole thing in here. I guess I can fit the whole thing. I really like sound effects records. I had one of the very first records I ever got and listened to on when I first got my record player was how to use your ears to identify what's wrong with the train as it's passing you. And so it was this guy sort of like teaching you how to listen to a train and to like diagnose like the problem with it, like mechanical issue.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a really cool record.
That.
So then I have this set of 3. I'll just show them one at a time because it's easier. Sound effects. Oh, it's hard to see that on my computer.
So do you digitize any of these?
I don't. I could, but I don't. I know I should. I'm sure you can probably find them online already. But this is Major Records Presents Sound Effects Volume 13. And this is hard to see because of my lighting here. So I'll just say that's that one. This one will be way easier to see. This is from the same record set. This is the blue version. This is volume 12, I believe. Sorry. I'm sorry about my lighting. Yuck. On the back here, just to show you what it looks like on the back. It's got the track listings over here.
I don't think that there's an online version of these. They might only exist on those vinyls.
Nah. They're somewhere, I guarantee.
Well, I'm looking for them.
You got to go to like libraryofcongress.com and stuff and find them.
Okay.
No, I'm serious.
No, those are some deep cuts. I've never considered
You really
that.
do. So that's some sound effects ones that I found. And I was really excited about those. Then I got 2 other sound effects records that I'll show you in a second. But I also got this one, which was a bummer. I don't care about this one. This is Meet the Prophets, and it's some sort of it's like a religious record. Priest there playing the guitar. I probably won't ever listen to this, but I don't know. It seems kind of interesting. There's like a little booklet in here that goes through and asks like questions, and you're supposed to like answer the questions based on your life and.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting layout.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know offhand the dimensions of an album art? Of a vinyl album?
I thought it was 12 inches by 12 inches, but this is more than 12 inches, I think. But I thought it was 12 inches by 12 inches.
You've got several framed behind you, so I thought maybe.
Yeah, it must be more. It must be more like 14 by 14. Now that
I can look it up.
Yeah, that's something I probably should know. Then I have the really cool records, so I want to show you these. This is a chilling sound effects.
Nice.
Chilling, thrilling sounds of haunted houses. Very cool.
I want it.
I love Halloween stuff. I absolutely do. Now, get ready to feast your eyes on this, Chris.
That's very cool.
Isn't it, though?
That's very cool.
I love it.
Man, we need to find a way to make these be something that I have. Instead of just you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now this is the coolest record that I bought, and I think that it's really cool. Maybe not necessarily super PC nowadays. This is Arnie and Chise. This is it's a Rasta Ruck from Arnie and Chise. And it says on the back here, I'll read the back to you. Here's what the back looks like, and I'll show you this. It is autographed by Chise herself.
Wow.
Which is really awesome. And so it just says on the back here, welcome to the wonderful, wacky world of Arnie and Chise. Finally, these two have been tracked on wax. Their audio antics have been recorded here for the first live album called Rasta Ruck from Arnie and Chise. Everything is candid and unbridged, just as it happened on stage at the Cellar Bar at the Sheraton Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And then it says that they play some instrumentals, and then it's basically
what year?
Comedy, 1966.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And the cool thing about this is I looked it up on Discogs because I always add everything new to my Discogs account.
Oh, cool.
And I looked this up, and this is the most valuable record that I bought for sure this year so far, I would say. This is a $30 record, unautographed.
Oh.
So this is actually
hold on to that one for retirement.
Yeah,
then.
this is actually like a relatively rare record, and the fact that it's autographed only makes it more sweeter. And now, Metallica fans, rejoice, because this is something you're going to be interested in, I promise. I managed to find for
Welcome back to the point of the video. Here we go.
$1 each.
I bet there were $1. I can tell you right now.
First one, this is 8-track tape of Procol Harum's debut album.
I think I must be very confused about how old Procol Harum is.
Possibly.
I mean, how is that? That's something that came out. Were they relevant when that happened?
Yeah, this is their first album. This is 70s.
Crazy.
But also remember, though, Chris, people... Let me see if there's a date on here. This doesn't say. 8 tracks were in like 70s and 80s. 60s, 70s, 80s, I think.
I feel I couldn't.
Or at least into the 80s, because obviously 80s was also cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Were already getting to be a big thing. So more 60s and 70s probably. But here we have Black Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath on 8-track.
Do you have an 8-track player?
I have one I have my old dad's old one from like high school.
Oh boy. Wow.
Here is Master of Reality by Black Sabbath.
So presumably you have listened to an 8-track before.
I have listened to an 8-track before. Yeah. It's just a big cassette tape.
I was going to say, how would you rate the quality of it compared to a cassette or otherwise?
I would say probably slightly less than a cassette, slightly better than a vinyl. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, everything's better than a vinyl. Other than, well, actually, reel-to-reel tape is actually surprisingly really good. The cool thing
I feel like reel-to-reel would be just because it's like, you know, there's this fact that is I've heard about like movies and stuff, old movies, like everything that was recorded to film, like all old movies, the originals, like the source film, looks incredible. Like the fidelity of it is so good, and that's when you get like Blu-ray transfers and all of these HD upreses of really really old movies. They look phenomenal.
So good, yeah.
Because they have the sources look great. The problem has always been reproduction for home use.
Yep, compression for
and so it's like
release.
I wouldn't be surprised if reel to reel did sound really great because it would be more of the source format for something from all those years ago.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, for sure. But there's always tape saturation and tape noise too. So
True.
The last 8-track tape I bought is Black Sabbath's self-titled. Now these, I couldn't find 2 of them on Discogs. One of them I did find, and it was like a $25 one. There's one copy right now of Master of Reality by Black Sabbath on 8-track for sale on eBay right now, and it's selling for $70 plus $20 shipping.
Wow.
So, now I'm not saying that that's what this is worth or that I could sell this for that much or anything, but that is at least the going rate right now on eBay. And the fact that I have 3 Black Sabbath 8-tracks and then I bought them each for $1, incredible. I could probably, I'm sure I could very easily sell all 3 of these for $100 on eBay if I wanted to.
That seems a little high, but you know better than I do.
Well, if one of them's worth $70,
well, is it worth 70 or is it listed for 70?
Well, if it's actually worth 40, but you list it as 70, but if one's worth 40 and you have 3 of them, 100.
Oh, so were you saying 100 each?
No, I was saying 100 for all 3 of them.
Oh, totally. I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to sell them, I don't think, but it's cool to have them. But
if you needed to, I'm going to hit the bathroom real quick.
Okay. While Chris stepped away, we're going to do something real quick. Look here on my table. I'll be back with you in just a moment. For today's video, I have something very special. The brand new Mountain Dew, Chris. This is Mountain Dew Summer Freeze. Summer Freeze helps me feel fine.
I hope anybody gives a shit about this Mountain Dew thing that you always do.
I just always want. Now, I will say with this, we've been talking for so long before we started recording, and now we've been recording for 29 minutes. So this is probably frozen. So I did also grab a towel.
In case it pops?
In case it pops. Which I hope it doesn't, because I want it. But I'm afraid what's going to happen is it's going to be totally stuck in there, and I'm going to have to go get a can opener.
Ooh, oh, that's going to be good.
No! Oh, you, come on! Oh, the air reached.
It's working. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Let it sit for the first couple of songs, and it'll be in good shape.
No, Chris. That's not how I work. So while I'm working on getting this out, Chris, we haven't talked about Kill 'Em All yet before we start listening. So tell me a little bit about this album, anything you know. Tell me your feelings about it, before we get into it. I guess I should have said at the beginning of the video, Chris has heard this album many times, I would assume.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I have not heard it, so this will be a first-time listen for me. What do you got to say?
Well, I know that they've talked a lot as a band about how they based their initial, their early years were based on that new wave British thrash metal.
Okay. Is there a specific example of a band?
Probably. Well, I do not know them.
I know that they got the reason they got the guy to produce one of their albums was because he produced Rainbow's most recent album. Before that, I can't remember which Metallica album it was, but they got the guy I think it was Master of Puppets. They got the guy that produced, maybe it was Ride the Lightning, I'm sorry. The guy that produced and recorded that album with them, they wanted him to do it because they loved the way that the Rainbow album sounded. There's like a progressive rock sort of band called Rainbow, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like, according to this list here, we got bands like Raven and Saxon.
Oh, I've heard of Saxon.
Yeah, Metallica opened for Saxon in '82 on their tour.
Okay.
And other bands like Budgie and Motorhead.
Wait, Motorhead was a band already at this point?
I believe so, apparently.
I mean, they must have been.
Yeah.
I thought Motorhead was like a contemporary of Metallica. I mean, they still might be, but...
I mean, it depends on at what age you want to start listing influences. Like, James and Lars were like 18 when they started working on this.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess that's true. Mm-hmm. Hey, Google, what year was Motorhead formed?
Motorhead was active from 1975 to 06.
1975.
Oh, wow.
To 06.
I did not hear Google answer you at all.
Yeah, she said 1975 to 06 is when they were active.
Yeah. I almost saw Motorhead live once, but they got stuck in Texas. Yeah, and otherwise, Dave Mustaine of Megadeth was originally a member of the band when they were working on writing songs for Kill 'Em All.
Metallica, okay.
Of Metallica, yeah. And he was kicked out of the band before they recorded the songs for Kill 'Em All.
Okay,
so he doesn't play on the album.
I've heard a little bit about this, but I don't. Chris and I never talked about like this actual story or anything. So Dave Mustaine was in Metallica.
Yeah.
And then they kicked him out, or he left, and then he went on and formed Megadeth.
I believe that the story is that they left him asleep in a hotel.
Really? Oh, they just ditched him.
Yeah,
Dang.
basically.
And then
I don't know what led up to that. I don't know if it was a surprise, but
okay.
I think that they were just not getting along. But then, then he formed Megadeth after that.
Okay.
And the Megadeth has a song called Mechanics.
Okay.
And Megadeth has a song called Mechanics. That is the same song as the Four Horsemen, but faster with different lyrics because he contributed writing to 4 different songs on Kill 'Em All, and they kept them as Metallica. And I think at the very least, he used one of them in his own work.
Interesting. So can you tell that it's sort of the same song?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Absolutely
really?
The same. Yes,
That
sir.
is really interesting. I don't know if I know of a case of that ever happening in the music.
No,
I mean,
it's
I'm sure
really
that's
interesting.
happened,
I can't think of any time that's happened either.
That is really interesting. Well, I will say one fun thing for me about Metallica and Megadeth, not really knowing that connection, at least at the time when I discovered this, but I mentioned before in several of our other Metallica videos that one of the first Metallica songs I was introduced to was Seek and Destroy, which I know is on this album. And it's the live version of that song, because that is the version that song used to be used, or a song that sounded very similar to it, used to be used as Sting's entrance theme song after he joined like the NWO in WCW. And so they would play that. And so on one of I was going to break it down here and I forgot it. So pretend I'm holding it up here and I'll just put a picture here. One of my WCW soundtracks, I think it's called WCW Mayhem the Music. There's a Metallica song on it and a Megadeth song on it. And the Metallica song is a live version of Seek and Destroy, which I have heard and I know. Search and seek and destroy.
Do you know which version that is from? Like which tour?
I don't know, and the fact that you would even ask that is insane to me, because how could you separate one live track song from another? But I also know enough about Metallica
their
now.
Binge and Purge double album that they toured from the Black Album tour is incredibly good, and I can name individual tracks from that by the crowd noise alone.
Oh, that's crazy, because I know you feel a lot like I do, that live recordings for the most part don't have much use.
Yeah, they have a very specific place. Like you would never listen to a live album in your car.
Yeah,
but I have listened to that album a lot.
I want to talk about that real quick in a second, but I just want to finish my point that there is a Megadeth song that I know that's also on that same WCW soundtrack, and I don't remember which it is. I know it has a really cool intro, and there's like this do 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 do, and it like builds, and there's like a sweet kick drum, and then it goes into the song from there. And I know that doesn't give anyone anything to go off of, but you can just look. Maybe I'll have it listed or something here on
Sounds like music to me.
but at the time, when I was listening to those, it didn't really matter to me who sang any of those songs. I would look up some of them, and I knew who Metallica was at the time because of Enter Sandman. I knew that song, obviously. And I would say at that point, I probably also knew Sad But True, or at least had heard it once or twice. Maybe even Unforgiven or Nothing Else Matters, honestly. I probably had heard those just in pop culture.
It was tough to
stuff.
escape the Black Album, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're talking already like the end of the 90s. So they had already been out for almost a decade at that point, the Black Album had. But since I never was a big Metallica fan,
sure.
I didn't acquire my first Metallica CD, which was the Black Album, until probably around that time. Is probably when I started to look into Metallica because of their song Seek and Destroy. I don't specifically remember being frustrated that Seek and Destroy wasn't on the Black Album when I got it,
Sure.
because at the time I was just a dumb kid in like high school or probably even middle school at that point. And I just I'll go to Walmart and buy the Metallica CD, and it'll have the one song I've heard from them on there, because of course they would. But
yeah, you'll buy the one Metallica CD that exists, and it'll have the song in there.
Yeah, and so and of course it wasn't, but. And it's funny, and at the time I wouldn't have been able to even differentiate like the difference between metal, thrash metal, 80s hair metal, none of that stuff. I wouldn't have known any of those terms or anything.
Yeah, does my mom like it? It's going to be hair metal, and if my dad likes it, it's going to be real metal.
yeah. Well, that's your family. My family could care less.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is kind of interesting. I do want to say real quick your comment about live recordings, because I know that a lot of people have a great love and appreciation for Metallica live. And obviously Metallica has a love and appreciation for themselves live as well, because when I look on their Discogs page, they have like 400 live shows that they've released that you can purchase on CD and stuff, which is insane. And I know a lot of those are just like, if you were at the show, you can purchase a copy of it or whatever. But they also have a lot of like official releases of their live stuff. And I think that that's really cool. And having heard Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets now, and Justice for All, and not necessarily thinking that those albums sound fantastic, but taking into consideration the time that they were made, I can absolutely see the value in Metallica recording live versions of some of their older songs like Master of Puppets with a really fantastic like live recording that was done in the last 20 years. Probably sounds even better sonically than the original Master of Puppets recording, you know what I mean? So I guess I had never really thought of or approached live tracks or live albums from that point of view before. And the other day I was watching, I have a Nightwish live Blu-ray, and I was watching it, and I was like, they were doing one of their older songs. And I thought, man, this just like, their older albums still sound really good, I think, but like they definitely have like an older feel to them. But hearing them played alongside other like modern songs, it was like, wow, this is like crazy how different this sounds. And something like clicked in my brain, and I was like, okay, I think I maybe understand a little bit more why people really appreciate all these live recordings from Metallica. So
Especially, I mean, even just the love of live music, thinking of how limited, like, and we talked about this in so many different aspects before, but like a lot of times people don't have a ton of options for listening to music in good ways.
that's
You
true.
know, sometimes they use they got your laptop speakers, your earbuds,
phone.
the TV speakers, phone, like, you know, you don't really have really nice equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go see an album live or a band live, and then it's like, this is the best this has ever sounded.
You know, that's true. You know, because I can sit and listen to music cranked up to 11 and just like, you know, rocking the house and it sounds fantastic. But you're absolutely right. A lot of people don't do that. And so going to a show might be the best, or at least one of the best ways to hear the music loud. And then obviously you have the whole interaction with the crowd, interaction with the band and stuff. That's really
There's a lot of fun to be had. Yeah, for sure. And like that Binge and Purge live double disc and DVD, I think is the version that I have. It sounds so good. And I had never really even considered this point until you brought it up just now, how many of the early songs they play on that, because that was like Black Album tour. So it's all the other stuff early on before that too. And it's like, here's Kill 'Em All songs, Ride the Lightning songs that are just like, this is easily the best version of this in terms of just overall fidelity alone.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about that because they must be good performers live in order for someone to think that.
They are
You know what I
so good live. And Chris, I think, has commented on the fact that they're he's so wrong about that.
I still get comments about that, and I think he was being sort of facetious when he was saying that, but
That's good. I have a friend who is, I think he's like 15 or so years older than us, and he had gone to see Metallica live in the 80s when they first started to get popular, and he said that one of the biggest things for him and his friends and like just people in general is like, I cannot believe somebody could take the recordings that we're hearing and how fast and tight and complex they are and play them as well as they did live. He was like, that was their biggest draw live, is that they were so good.
sure. And that makes sense for the style of music they're doing. Okay, I think I'm ready to get into this album. Are you?
I was just going to say, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I will say I am definitely prepared to take this album for what it is and try to, like, understand and appreciate it for the time. But I also expect, like I said, this to be Metallica's worst sounding album. So, I like...
It's not... it's not really any worse than Lightning. They're pretty on par with each other.
Okay. I'm curious to see. I should have listened to Lightning again before we did this just to have something to compare it to, but I'm just curious to see. I know a lot of people hate Saint Anger, and I know a lot of people hate the way that Death Magnetic was mixed.
Saint Anger, the problems with Saint Anger and Death Magnetic could not be more different from each other.
Right.
And I love them both.
And so I'm curious to see when we're all done with this, which Metallica album I think sounds worse. And without knowing anything and hearing anything else, this would be the one I probably would expect would be the least the worst sounding.
So here's an interesting thing. This is a little bit too much preamble for what I'm about to say, but here we go anyway. There's a great Top Gear sort of video where two of the guys rate the worst car of all time. And one of the criteria that they use is like a car that's just bad, made by a company that makes bad cars, is not nearly as offensive as a car that's terrible, made by an excellent car maker who has plenty of other options for which you should expect them to know better.
Yep.
And
that makes perfect sense.
I think based on that, something like Death Magnetic and Saint Anger would be more at the top of a worst sounding Metallica album list because of all of the available options for it to not sound the way that it does.
That is a perfect analogy. 100%. So I'll try to keep that in mind. This is their first album. Now, I also did mention in one of the other Metallica videos that generally when a band is releasing their first album, a lot of the times I find that might be some of their best songwriting, because those are the songs that they probably sat with for the longest amount of time before they got recorded. Their first album.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just saying, a band in general, I find a lot of the times their first album is maybe some of their best songs, because those were the songs that they created when they were forming as a band, and then they probably sat with them and played them the longest amount of time before they recorded them.
I will say, an argument against that, especially when it comes to how old the band may have been when they created their first album, is like, what is the subject matter involved? Because like one of my favorite bands, Isley, when they were like writing their first album, they were like 14 or 15. And so like the lyrics of their first album, it's all very like the kinds of problems that 16-year-olds have.
Sure.
And
yeah, I can
they
see
do
that.
not line up with the kinds of problems that people in their mid-20s who are dealing with, drug addiction may have.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. I just know that was something I specifically mentioned in one of the other videos in reference to this album, and I think Chris Schoenberg was like, "Oh, that's an interesting thought." One other thing right before we get into this is I just want to look at some of the song titles real quick, and see if anything other than "Seek and Destroy" jumps out at me.
Sure.
So, as I'm looking at, we have "Hit the Lights," "The Four Horsemen," "Motorbreath,"
Yep.
"Jump in the Fire," "Anesthesia," "Pulling Teeth," "Whiplash," "Phantom Lord," "No Remorse," "Seek and Destroy," and "Metal Militia." So that's interesting. So of those, "Seek and Destroy" is definitely the only song that like rings any bells for me at all in terms of like being a song or anything. I would say "The Four Horsemen" is interesting because I would assume that that's probably referencing the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which is kind of cool. I like that idea.
Yeah, James loves to write songs about mythical beings like
I guess.
Cthulhu and
Creeping
stuff.
Death,
He loves that
Creeping
stuff.
Death,
Yep,
right?
absolutely. The thing that should not be. All that crap. I love it.
Metal Militia is the thing that's really interesting to me because I know I've heard that before. I don't know if it's a website or something, but Metal Militia to me sounds like I don't know, but I'm curious if that's the instrumental song because I know we usually get instrumental stuff and it's usually the last track on their earlier albums. It's usually the last track. And now as I'm looking at the lengths of the songs, we have Four Horsemen is the longest at 7 minutes, 12 seconds. Then we have almost 7 minutes with Seek and Destroy, which I'm excited about. No Remorse at 6.5. But other than that, everything else is like around 5 minutes and below.
Yeah.
So that's a little surprising to me. I would have thought their first album would have had probably their longer songs on it just because that's like I said, those are the ones they had the most time to sit with and write. But maybe not. Maybe not.
But
though.
their influence of, coming out of the thrash scene.
Right.
Thrash music doesn't really have a lot of length to
That's
it.
true.
It's not until Lightning and especially Puppets and I've heard that Cliff Burton actually had a huge influence on how like complex and long and like structure changing and drawn out and almost orchestral the middle albums got to be in terms of especially with Puppets. I think that's the one that I've heard that he had the most influence in, and that's the kind of that's where all that length came from, was stuff that he wanted to make.
That's really interesting. And then of course we think of 72 Seasons, which was the longest that it could have possibly been, 77 minutes and 48 seconds or whatever. And those songs were crazy long. And the little bit of negative comments we've got, not negative comments about us on our videos, but the negative comments about the music itself, multiple times people have mentioned that that Metallica needs to rein in the long songwriting and that they need to shorten the intros of almost like every song.
I completely agree. There was you listen to Puppets and compositionally speaking, the length kind of makes sense. And ever since then, like especially because they got out of the old stuff and then Black, and then they got hyper produced and very mainstream after that.
Yep.
Like I was saying about Death Magnetic, it felt so much like they were just sort of pandering, or not really, but maybe more like catering to the complaints that people had about new Metallica for the 20 years prior to that.
Right.
And it's like, we missed the long songs. I was like, all right, here's 7 minutes of a song that could actually just stand to be 5. And I think that they, the complex songwriting that was so prevalent in Puppets and all of the earlier stuff, like that's the reason it was long and why it works so well at being long. And now it's just long for the sake of being long, and it's not working as well. And
the other thing too, and this might not necessarily correlate exactly, but when you write fast songs, like where the tempo of the song is super fast, the song probably tends to be over faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just more song in a quicker amount of time. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so the idea that like there wasn't like a ton of fast stuff on 72 Seasons at all. It was that being the most recent thing I had heard between Black Album and that. I was, I've thought about that so much since then. I was shocked because I was basically hearing a completely different band, and I was thrown off, and we weren't discussing that at all because it was the first time you guys had heard it as well. But I was like, this is like a blues rock band. This is like a Southern blues rock band that to me didn't feel like Metallica at all.
There's so much difference between that. Like Black Album is a pretty hard cap on old Metallica, and then Load, Reload, Garage is very much like Death Magnetic is a return to form in a different kind of way. Saint Anger is a completely different beast in terms of why it exists in the first place. But like everything post Black, 72 Seasons fits that structure really well. There's so many songs on it that remind me a lot of what they do in Reload and Garage too. And I love those. I mean, I absolutely love that type of songwriting from them. And I don't know, I just there's plenty of merit to it. And I think that you'll hear that when we finally get to those albums is just how much that fits into that vein of who they are.
That's kind of one of the reasons I'm super excited to get into those two albums for sure. Being Load and Reload. But okay, thank you, listener, watcher, for letting us go down the little thing. Chris, if Chris Schoenberg were here, he'd be like, we're doing a podcast again. We're not doing a reaction, we're doing a podcast. So with that said, let's listen to track 1, Hit the Lights, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Again, we're listening to the 2016 remastered version. I'm pretty sure this is the version that's on Spotify. We are not using Spotify to listen to it, so I can't say that 100%. I do know that this album was released in 1983, so we got to take that into consideration. I believe that was the same year that the first Flock of Seagulls album came out with Iran on it. Which to me...
interesting benchmark.
Well, for me, if you said, Patrick, what's the 80s? I would say Flock of Seagulls, Iran.
Oh, I see.
That's what I think of as
80s metal
music.
is such a different beast, though.
I know. I'm not saying that this should sound like that or anything.
Fair.
I'm just saying, in the world, Flock of Seagulls was there, and then this came out. So I'm going to keep that in mind.
Just keeping, even for contrast's sake, I suppose.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, all right. Hit the lights. Ready, Chris?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Is this a fade in?
Yeah.
That wasn't even a good fade in. Boy, listen to those cymbals.
They're in there somewhere.
No, it's all cymbals.
Right, yeah.
And people are complaining about the hi-hat on 72 Seasons. All right. A little Motley Crue is exactly what it sounds like. Okay.
Sounds a lot better than I remember this album sounding.
I was going to ask you that because I think it sounds pretty good.
It does, yeah.
I kind of love this.
Good.
I really do. Oh, good. He did still have his wah pedal. Or, I mean, this is where he got his wah pedal.
Were there wah pedals in 83?
Yeah, Chris would be mad at us if I said that, because he would be like, Jimi Hendrix used wah pedal all the time. Whoa, okay. The solo moved off to the side.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
How far off to the side?
a little bit off to one side. Nope, now it's on the other side.
Yep. Yeah, like it's like a 10-degree shift.
Yeah. Well, it was because they had a cut in the middle, where you kind of overlapped it.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. Listen to that only sub kick.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing high in that at all.
Okay.
I will say,
Holy crap.
I think there's more ride cymbal in that song than the rest of their entire career.
I was literally going to say that too. Every verse was just ride, 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 ride.
Yeah.
Ride
Which
the
I love.
cymbal.
I love a good ride, but that's just so funny. I never considered that
Dude,
before.
that was shocking to me. Now,
Good.
I really wonder how much this has to do with the remaster, because of course, when you're remastering music, if you think about it logically, the further back you go, the more the song should benefit from being remastered, right?
I agree.
Because you're bringing something that's, the further back you go, the more space and time it has to new technology to exist to make it sound better. So a really thing that I noticed there, and I almost feel like I should go listen to Ride the Lightning now just to compare it, but maybe we'll do that after we're done with this. But like, to me, right away, that felt older to me. It felt like, okay, this is so old and so separated from what I would expect modern music to sound like, that I didn't have listening to it, it felt like, oh man, this sounds really good for what it is. Whereas I remember listening to Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, and I'm just thinking like, oh, this is like so close to sounding fantastic, Whereas this is like far enough away from that I do think it sounded fantastic because of how bad it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a really weird way to say it. So right away in my brain, there was like a disconnect. One thing I loved, those are the heaviest vocals I have heard James do. That is James screaming metal vocals.
The whole album's like that.
My biggest complaint I was going to save all of my comments for Metallica. I want us to all have like a big conversation about Metallica when we're done with this. And I've been thinking about a lot of things. And the one biggest complaint I was going to have about Metallica, maybe not, that's a bad way to say it, biggest complaint, but one complaint I was going to have for sure was that I feel like consistently James' vocals are not as heavy as I want them to be.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
I think
Interesting.
that Metallica would be so much cooler if James had like a metal scream and was like, had aggressive vocals. Because and we can get into this when we talk about them more. Like, they wouldn't have become as popular as they did if he would have been singing that way. But like there were moments in there where he was like legit screaming, and I was like, this is what I wanted. Like, he was definitely doing like a higher pitched thing, which would have definitely been the thing at the time. I was joking around when it first started about Motley Crue, but like the way the guitars sounded, it was mixed very much. The guitars, at least, were mixed very much like I would associate with sort of like Motley Crue and like hair metal. And I'm not super familiar with hair metal, and I do know that later on in the 80s, hair metal had like really good production on a lot of it. But it was also the guitar parts that were being played, like it sounded like that was like a happy song, right? It was
it did.
It wasn't like it wasn't like minor key, like it wasn't like a
chuggy, broody.
Yeah, it wasn't
absolutely
like that at all.
Well, and the whole song is just about how cool it is to go out on stage and play for crowds.
Oh, I never heard a single lyric. Never got a single lyric.
There's nothing about it you need to hear because that's all you get. That's all there is to it. It's very, very superficial, but it has that vibe big time where it's like, we're here to have fun and this is what fun sounds like.
Now, mix-wise, some interesting things were happening there. The guitars had no low end in them at all. Like zero low end. the kick had no high end in it at all. Zero high end. So the kick is just this sort of like subsonic frequency. And that tells me that they probably put the kick like right in the hole of the kick drum, like the kick mic in the hole of the kick drum, or they just EQ'd it all out. But there's no beater sound on the kick at all. And so it's just this like thud that you hear. There's no stompiness. There's no beater
And I
sound.
think because there's no low end anywhere else, it still stands out enough where it works out all right.
Yeah, you can definitely tell when it's happening. All the low frequencies are coming from the kick and the bass, which I did hear the bass. The bass definitely sounded sort of like generic bass.
Sure.
I would be curious if they play. I would assume Cliff probably had it plugged into his amp and he was playing through an amp and they were recording the amp. But it's
interesting.
It's very common in all genres of music when you're recording bass to just plug the bass directly into the console and record, or into the preamp and just like play and record bass direct in. And it sounded like that here. So I don't know if they did that. I would be kind of surprised because I'm sure live, obviously, he plays through amps and stuff. So I would assume that they would want it to sort of sound like it would sound that way, but I don't know. I thought the bass sounded okay. I thought the mixture of the low frequencies from the bass and the kick mixed with the abundance of high frequencies in the cymbals, which were crazy, and the guitars, which were all high frequencies, it actually made the mix itself pretty okay. Like, I don't think the guitars were overly screechy or anything like that. And when I was listening to it, I was trying to think, like, again, my reference for things isn't very much. Like, I don't have any reference to things that are like comparable to this, like for the time it came out, or music that sounded like this, like was being played like this. But I was thinking of stuff like Steppenwolf, which I know is totally different, but like the guitars don't sound that different from what I would expect to be on like sort of like a 70s rock album or something.
Sure.
Like a heavier 70s album is what I could imagine these guitars sort of sounding like. Or Black Sabbath, for example. Like Black Sabbath played slowly, but their guitar tone could sort of sound like this, I think. Again, I'm not hugely familiar with Black Sabbath's music or really any heavy music from before this at all.
I also am not. I don't really listen to old metal. Like this is by far and away the oldest metal that I listen to, and the only music I listen to that exists before 1990 is Metallica. Like I don't really have anything else. There's plenty of things that I like, but they're not in my rotation anywhere,
Right.
Now, shall we move on?
Yeah, but yes, let's go ahead and listen to track 2. So this is the longest song on the album. This is the Four Horsemen.
I consider this to be one of the best songs on the album.
Okay, all right. I'm so excited for this. I will also say, and I didn't bring this up earlier, I do have my fade outs board here.
Are you going to have to create a fade ins board for listening to Metallica songs?
No,
apparently?
I don't think that. Well, which of their albums had 3 fade ins? Like that was it Master? Justice? What the hell?
Justice had 3 fade ins, yeah.
I don't think that
fade ins are not as stupid as fade outs, though.
I mean,
because fade ins to me seem like a choice, an artistic choice, and fade outs feel lazy. Because you got to start a song. You're not just going to live a life constantly playing a song. So at some point, you go from not playing a song to playing one.
That's true. Yep, that's true. It's not like the song existed forever before you started listening to it. That's a great point. Great point. Well, hopefully all the songs on here don't fade out. Hopefully we don't get, or fade in. Hopefully we don't get more of that. But
yeah.
All right, we'll see what we get though. All right, Four Horsemen in 3, 2, 1. Such crunchy little guitars.
Mm-hmm.
His vocals remind me of old Rob Zombie.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
That's how Rob Zombie used to sing.
Like White Zombie era?
Yeah, before that even.
Yeah.
The early White Zombie, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because White Zombie started before Metallica. Like, Rob Zombie was making music in the late 70s.
I'm very surprised to hear that.
I love it. Oh, my God.
More of that ride.
Yeah. But also James.
Yeah.
Man, those guitars really do kind of not sound very good.
Well, they have, their frequency range is like this.
Yeah, they're very thin. But they're serving their purpose.
They are, yeah. That kick is all
Just lows.
60 and down, soft, round everywhere.
So, do they perform songs from this album now?
Mm-hmm.
So, does he scream like that? Probably not.
Good question. I can't remember.
This is straight up a White Zombie riff.
Good.
Ready on
cool.
beats on, front, I got the bounce on the beat down, beats on,
This is very Metallica sounding.
Is it? Okay. I guess. Ooh, that bass. Yeah.
Same with this, where it's just like dun, 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 and then a little riff, and then back to the open and ba-da-da-da-da.
Yep. Wow. I should have looked up how long it took them to record this, because this is something that could have been recorded over the course of like 2 days or something.
Oh, sure.
Like some crazy thing, you know? Let us know in the comments.
Some of that instrumental influence, like Orion.
Yeah.
Influence, you know, in reverse, because this is older. But.
Yeah, yeah. Whoa, that bass going up there high. That sounds awful because the lows are just gone. You know? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what happens when you don't double track things like that. Guitar off to the far left, or far right.
Yep.
Sorry,
Both
my head,
and then, yeah.
my
They're
stereo
split.
image is split. My stereo image is reversed because of my extra cable, so.
Yeah.
Whoa. How old were they when they wrote this?
I'm gonna look, because I was just about to find out.
Okay. I really like that riff during that chorus solo there. That was a really simple riff. It reminded me of a lot of different things.
James was 20, Lars was 19.
Okay. Whoa.
Very cool. Love that.
What was that?
Some sort of demon.
Crazy reverb.
Yeah, Mark Kirk's over there playing a guitar in some warehouse down the street.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And I say that slow bit in the middle, the bum bum bum,
Yeah.
do with the bass and all that stuff. Like that's the kind of thing
I mean,
that I think
the
is...
Danny California part? The Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Anyway.
That's what that was.
Well, Metallica was first, so
Okay,
it was stolen.
okay.
That is exactly like if you're looking for the most concentrated influence that Cliff Burton had on them as a band and on their songs, those types of interludes are like pure him every time.
Okay, and that makes sense.
And I think because you won't hear really any of that in Justice, I don't think.
Okay. Well, I had, with this song, it was more obvious, and maybe it was just because I was caught up on that first track with like listening to it and everything, but I have to readjust myself to what happened on Ride the Lightning, which was Metallica wrote a 2.5-minute song, and then they just basically played guitar riffs and guitar solos for 5 minutes after that in every song. So it's like, okay, we've got a verse and a somewhat chorus, then a verse and a chorus, and then we're just going to play guitar for 5 minutes. Right. And that's basically what this was. So I had to readjust myself to that. That was one of the things that I really appreciated on 72 Seasons. They always came back to do the chorus again at the end of the song. I really appreciated that. And I really missed that here.
Okay.
Really missed that in this. And that was something that I didn't enjoy as much on Ride the Lightning. So now I'm starting to feel the connection here. I will say the guitars on this time, now that I'm like past the shock of what it sounds like, now I'm focusing on it more. And we were talking about it while we were listening. The guitars really don't sound very good. They're just crunchy white noise. Mm-hmm. They're not bad though. And I definitely think they're serving their purpose. And it's,
they're tonal. They're making things happen. They're not lost in some mud.
No,
and it's not a ton of body to them.
No, and that's fine. But it also is, that you really can hear the imperfections in everything that they're playing. Which is interesting. You wouldn't necessarily hear that as much on their modern. It's so interesting that the last thing we heard was a 2023 album. Now we're going back, 40 years to 1983, right?
I will say, yeah, for sure. And I will say there was things that I heard in this that I was like, oh, this shows up on 72 Seasons, this thing that they've done here.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Because that's what we kept saying with 72 Seasons when we were listening to it. We're like, this is like a callback to that. This is like a callback to that. And I was personally hearing a lot of callbacks to Black Album, but I think that's just because that's the album of theirs that I'm the most familiar with.
Sure.
So that's what I was noticing.
It's almost like this has been one band this whole time.
Great point, because there's a lot of people who would argue with you and tell you that that's not true, and that real Metallica ended in whatever Black Album came out. But
90.
Hold on, I gotta adjust my leg here. Okay, there we go. Sorry. I think,
but it's so interesting. I don't know. There's some kind of weird with something that's this influential and has been such a part of my life for so long, and is so unique to itself. It's difficult to hear something that is just their style coming out in all of their music, because even in things that I've said, like you'll hear something new and you think, oh, this is a callback to that. And it's like using that sort of terminology makes it feel a bit more intentional that they did that. Like let's throw in some callbacks to the old stuff to make people happier. Like we want to, because whatever. But in reality, this is just how they write their songs. This is just what Metallica sounds like.
For sure. And I almost wonder, like, how often do they go back and listen to their old things, their old songs or old albums?
Would they even need to?
Except for when they're getting ready to rehearse songs for a tour.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing. because yesterday I watched 2 Metallica videos on YouTube, and one of them was, James was talking to the crowd, and he was like, this is from a show just recently that they were doing on their new tour. And he was like, I want to do something. Let's feel out the crowd here a little bit. And then he said, Saint Anger. And he went thumbs up, and he wanted everyone to like, yeah, or boo. And he went, Saint Anger? And everyone was like, boo. And he's like, Saint Anger? And everyone's kind of like, yeah. And he's like, I'm trying to influence you. And that was sort of like his, and then they went into playing one of the songs from Saint Anger, and the video shut off before they even started. But that was
one thing that I find really funny about Metallica Live, James Hetfield especially, is that like metal is always had this sort of veiled, like this persona of being very dark and like monsters and demons and dark sludgy music that's terrifying and whatever else. And James is the most walking dad joke that has ever been at the front of a metal band in history. Like all of his live shows, he says goofball stuff, man. It's so funny.
Not knowing anything about Metallica, like that I get that. Like that is the way he comes off, which is so cool.
Yeah, like he'll say stuff like "alrighty," It's like you're a metal band.
the other video that I saw of Metallica, I just remembered what it was. They were in the middle of playing a song, and one of the lyrics was something about, and you heard a terrible scream or something. And Robert was off to the side playing the bass, and he at that point in the song, I guess, is supposed to do like a scream, and he did like this. He went like or something, and it like James literally had to stop singing the verse because he was laughing so hard at what Robert did. He's just like he gets through the part, and then he gets to the verse, and he just stops singing and starts smiling and keeps playing the part. So like that, I love that.
Wonderful.
About him. I love that about
so
him.
much.
And, okay, but anyway, back to Kill 'Em All. Let's just listen to the next one. How about that? Because we talked a little bit about it already, and I just want to listen to it a little bit more. So this is Motorbreath, which this is one of the shortest Metallica. Is this the shortest Metallica track?
I was just thinking about that. This song is like, we have a rule, you and I, about the minimal allowable length for a song, allowable length. And this just barely touches it.
It does.
And I cannot imagine a Metallica song that's like 2:58. Like, unheard of. And this is really close. And I never realized how short this song is.
So I'm really curious if this is going to be like a fast, thrashy, balls to the wall song the entire time. I'm curious.
We'll see. Yeah. I mean, it's a...
I don't know.
The thing that I've got here says this song is about living life to the fullest and not wasting time, which once again, we're looking at relatively superficial lyrics on people for, being so young. But, what a great way to exemplify that by making a 3-minute song.
Yep. The shortest song in their history. Yep. Okay. All right. Let's listen to it. 3, 2, 1. The guitars have more lows in them.
True.
This sounds better than the last track. Living and dying, laughing and crying. Once you have seen it, you'll never be the same. Life in the past is just how it seems. Hard and heavy, it's dirty and mean. Motorbreath is how I live my life. I can't take it any other way. Motorbreath, sign of living fast. It's going to take your breath away. Don't stop for nothing, it's full speed or nothing. I'm taking down, whatever's in my way. Getting your beats and shooting the line. Sending the shivers up and down my spine. Motorbreath, it's how I live my life. I can't take it any other way. Motorbreath, sign of living fast. It's going to take your breath away. It does sound sort of like amateuristic guitar playing sometimes. And that's coming from...
They rip into the solo.
I guess I'm more talking about like their togetherness.
Oh, I see.
Unless I don't know if James did all the rhythm for this album or not, or if Kirk played the rhythm on the what I'm hearing on the one side.
It's tough to say.
Whoa.
Is that right again?
This is a nice little fast thrash riff.
Over.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Okay. So it was faster the whole time. That was interesting because that was pretty much just, well, you know, I said last song that sometimes I had to adjust my thinking back to Ride the Lightning, where they would write a 2.5 minute song and then they just solo for the rest of the song, basically. This, you know, and that was one thing I was going to mention with the first track that I forgot to bring up, was that there would be like a verse and then there would be like a little solo section just for like a few measures, just like 4 bars of solo, then back into the verse, and then another like I like it when Metallica does that, but they don't often fit solos in between like lyrics like that. So at least when, you know,
yeah. Well, they'll do just a little bit, and then like
a small section in between
right into the next
vocals.
thing. Yeah.
Usually their solos are just like these giant things that you wait for in the middle to like the last third of a song, and so that was nice. This, I don't know. I definitely, the moment it started and the entire time, I felt like that sounded sonically better than the.
I feel like I agree with
song.
you on that.
I'd have to listen to the first one again, but definitely better quality than the second track, at least than Four Horsemen.
And I do wonder if there will be an inconsistency in quality through the songs, you know, on the songs through the album, just by virtue of being old and whatever else they, you know, happens.
Well, and the how they were recorded. Did you end up looking like how long it took them to record this and stuff?
Oh no, I forgot.
Because, let me. Oh, we got a comment on our And Justice for All video.
Oh no, don't look at it.
When Patrick is talking about heavy bands doing ballads, he should check out something like Opeth. Like Burden from Watershed is a perfect example of a heavy band doing a ballad justice. So good. That's a great comment. I am definitely aware of who Opeth is, and they are a band I've always wanted to kind of get into, but I've been scared because I had never been into prog rock or prog metal. At least over the last few years, I've been getting into it a little bit more. So Opeth is definitely something I would maybe be willing, because I know they have albums that are just like 4 tracks and the album's like 750 minutes long. So
yeah, you should bring Austin on for an Opeth conversation.
Yeah, and I also know that they have like songs where it's like just guttural screaming and low droning guitars for 7 minutes, and then they have nice pretty songs with like violins and things in them. So it's like, yeah, so for sure.
2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay. So then I almost wonder if like maybe they had their stuff set up, recorded a batch of songs, and then they like the next day they moved stuff around or something.
And that makes me wonder too, based on what you were saying about togetherness. Like it does have a bit of a looser feel. And a thought that I had based on that is like, I wonder how much time they had available to do repeated takes and make it be as tight and you know, precise as possible. And if they only 2 weeks to record an album, they probably just took some of the best takes they had. Right.
And at the time too, it's not like it would be nowadays where like if I was recording a metal band, which I did many times with Chris Schoenberg's bands, they recorded and it wasn't perfect, and so I went in and moved things around and made it perfect. You know what I mean?
1,000%.
And that kind of a thing would have been unheard of in the 80s. So that also leads to, that's another point or a check.
Does this sound like a live recording album? I don't know necessarily what that means.
No, I don't.
Or like not like a live album, but like they're all in, you know, playing together in a room at the same time, kind of thing.
I'm sure that they tracked the drums first with probably James playing the rhythm guitar.
I see.
And they could have kept the rhythm guitar track, but I'm guessing they probably went back and re-recorded all the guitars afterwards. People do comment on our videos a lot talking about how Metallica has recorded things in the past, and I know that they have said, and I wish I could remember exactly, that from a certain point on, James has done all rhythm guitars on Metallica albums. So like James plays what you hear on the right and what you hear on the left. And someone commented even once that sometimes he'll just use Kirk's guitar to try to make it sound even, I'm sure they use many guitars while they're recording, although maybe they don't. Back at this time, maybe they each only had one guitar, and that's all it was.
I've seen him. Yeah, I mean, I know he's got like 3 or 4, at least 2 that are like signature James Hetfield. Like you're always going to get the Flying V and the Explorer with the diamond plate finish and all kinds of stuff. So there's several that I know him to always use.
But that's when you are seeing them live. Like when they're in a studio, they could have like. For example, my old boss, when I used to work at a recording studio in Omaha, he recorded an album with the band America, who is fantastic band. But he said when they recorded, they actually brought a giant like ice cream truck sized truck, like a big box truck, and they opened up the back, and it was just literally filled with like 80 guitars.
Wow.
And he said they brought every single guitar in, and for certain chords, they would just use certain guitars.
Wow.
And that it was that insane. And I'm not saying Metallica would be like that. That would like literally spit in the face of the like punky, thrashy atmosphere or aesthetic that they have.
For sure.
But at the same time, in the studio, if you have one guitar and it sounds better to do palm muting on one guitar than it does like open chords on another guitar, if you have that ability to do it, it would be stupid to not do the parts on the instruments that make them sound the best,
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of times that's how stuff like that is done. But also because this is Metallica's first album, this is a thrash album. I'm sure at the time there was like, I mean, you even said in one of our previous videos that you thought the term sellout was like made for Metallica. But like, I'm sure that there was a part of them that was like, we're not going to overproduce this, like you and I always talk about with punk music, like the fact that it sounds like crap is like part of the aesthetic of it. And so I'm sure there's a part of that goes into this as well, where
it makes me wonder what are the limits? What is the ceiling of overproduction in the early 80s look like? Like how far is what this is from how produced it could have sounded?
Yeah, could it have sounded even better than this? And I mean, I would think it probably could have sounded better than this, but you have to take into account the factors of the youth of the performers, the inexperience of them playing in a studio. If this is the first time they were ever in a studio recording, let me tell you, recording in a studio is the most different thing in the world to just sitting around practicing or performing on a stage.
Yeah.
Every single thing that you think about is completely different, and it forces you to acknowledge things about songs that you never would if you're just rehearsing or playing live. And so, that could have been a factor as well. We should have Wikipedia'd this and like read the whole article about it, before. But I know I did read a lot of Metallica wiki before we started doing any of these videos, but that was already at this point like 4 months ago, so I don't remember any of that stuff.
Yeah,
but.
And I mean, all this, like, I would have, but even if I had, I feel like I wouldn't have a ton of answers.
Yeah, well, and part of it also, too, is like I don't necessarily want to know everything about the album before we start listening to it, I want to just listen to it without having too many expectations or anything. And there's already so much baggage that comes with this before hearing it because of the time, like I've just said now a million times, the time that it was recorded, the time period when it was recorded, and their experience. And also the experience.
And how much money they had to do it.
Exactly how much money. You said they did it in 2 weeks, which is probably very short for a band. I'm sure they probably spent 5-6 months working on 72 seasons. So
sure. Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to Jump in the Fire. You ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Okay, right into it. I was going to say that I thought the bass sounded like it sounded on Ride the Lightning. It's kind of that farty, spanky sounding bass guitar. my goodness, that vocal delay. Whoa.
Yeah. Ooh.
Those background vocals. The loudest thing we've heard on the whole album so far. Sound like little boys. So come on! Does Lars ever do background vocals? Like shouts
No.
or anything? No?
I can't say that he's never done it once in his whole life, but
Right, right. I think the volume of his lead vocals are too low on this song.
I was going to ask you if you thought that.
But I didn't notice that in the last tracks. I think they're just lower on this one. Or maybe it's because there's more delay or more effects on them. The first track was not effect heavy at all, and I liked that a lot. I thought his vocals sounded really good there. I think that was my favorite solo on the album so far. The bass here is very uncharacteristic of Metallica. You know, boom, 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 boom.
Oh,
boom,
sure,
boom.
yeah.
Very dancey, like weird. I love it. I would love to hear this song done now.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think I've heard a live version of this.
Yeah, that's too bad. I
I
mean,
haven't looked for it, though.
it doesn't sound like them really at all here with that bass. It's such a weird part. I love it though.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, get out the board.
And you know that one, that especially hurts. That especially hurts because I was really feeling and digging that solo. You know.
And there are some parts of it you'll never hear.
Yeah, who knows? For all we know, it could still be happening.
Yep, still currently to this day.
Okay.
Funny, fun fact I learned about that song.
Okay.
Jump in the Fire, the song is about the devil tempting people with sin and waiting for them to die and enter hell, where they jump in the fire. The lyrics are written from the perspective of the devil, who tells people that he will fulfill their desires and give them what they want in exchange for their souls. And I never, in all of the years of my life, would have imagined that song is about that.
That's cool. I mean, that
That is very cool.
Yeah. And I'm sure in 1983 or whatever, that was probably like, oh, you listen to them talking about the devil or whatever.
Pearls clutched for hundreds of miles in every direction.
Whereas nowadays, if a metal band even mentioned the devil, they'd be like, oh, "What religious fanatics to think that the devil is real? How could they possibly? How dare they mention a religious figure like the devil?" So that tells you about the changing times. But the bass, that's my favorite song on the album, I would say so far.
Just because he's like bump, bump,
Yeah, he's just
bump,
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 bump.
bump. Like he's just in a different band having fun, and James is over there like squinting really hard, like
Yeah, turn it up.
And then all of a sudden, Kirk is just like taking a nap on the side, and then he gets up and he's like, "Oh, hold on a second, let me drink a Red Bull. Red Bull gives you wings." Now I will say, I mentioned that like first sort of guitar solo that was in that song that was my favorite that I heard. I think it's just that I'm starting to focus a little bit more on it, like just the mix. I'm thinking less about the mix because we've had 3 songs now where I've been focusing on the mix.
Sure.
And now I'm starting to listen to the songs a little bit more. And I liked what was happening there. I really liked that guitar solo. I really was impressed with the cleanliness that he played that whole last part as it was fading out. Because he was doing stuff that I don't necessarily think was like super hard. Like he wasn't doing runs on the guitar.
But it was like, boop, beep, beep, beep. You know, it's like super fast, almost tremolo, and it's like just these little single note variations.
His fingers are staying in the same place, and he's moving, and then he'll move them and keep going, and then move it and do it rather than going, which he does. But I'm saying the cleanliness with which that was done, and going back to what we were saying earlier, like, did he do multiple takes of that, and then they could splice in between one take and another? Probably, I would assume. But if not, and they just had to go with like the best take or whatever, that's like super impressive. And
I like to imagine that he did not do that because I prefer a world where Metallica is just unbelievably excellent.
Well, I mean, and listening to their live recordings, depending on how much their live recordings are edited, which I'm sure they are edited to some degree, and depending on the decade with which they were recorded, like, I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, man, I do want to hear them like recording these songs live really well, because we have talked about this before. Like, you mentioned in your first video that you did with us for Black Album that you wish that they would have taken their first 3 albums and just like re-record them in the studio.
That'd be
like
amazing.
You would give it. You said I would give anything to have them like re-record all of this like with modern technology.
Absolutely.
And now that I'm coming around to the idea of live recordings, I'm like, they kind of did that when they performed the songs live,
That's fair. That's a good point.
So like as
Totally.
long as their live recordings sound like phenomenal, which there's no excuse for them being the biggest rock band on the planet, they should have the best live personnel imaginable on the planet.
They're great.
So like they should have the best mixing engineers and the best whatever's working on their stuff. And now I'm getting more excited to like listen to some of their live stuff and be like, oh, maybe we can kind of hear their albums, these older songs done in a much more modern way. So
I think that you're going to be really impressed with a lot of their live stuff.
So now I don't want to focus on the live stuff anymore because we've talked about that a lot just because I've been thinking about it on my own since we've been taking a little break from doing the Metallica videos. But I really like that song. It was my favorite one on the album so far. I loved Cliff on the bass, like I said, just doing the plodding like quarter notes. I loved it the whole time. So let's move on.
Yeah.
And
speaking of Cliff on the bass, you are on to the next song.
Okay, all right. This is Anesthesia, in quotes, pulling teeth. It's not too often you get a
you don't get your parenthetical part first. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, this is Anesthesia, pulling teeth. In 3, 2, 1.
Bass solo, take 1.
What the heck? Okay. Boy, this is not what I expected. Wow. Oh, cool. Does he have a pedal, like some sort of like a wah pedal?
I think so. Yeah, he must.
Or an octave thing.
But you can hear so much of the interludes and like Orion and stuff in the way that this is written.
Yeah. Oh, I will say Orion is the one song people got so mad at me for talking over the most. And it was the most egregious me talking over something, so
Yeah.
I probably don't get those references as well as I should. This isn't the whole track, is it?
No.
Okay, I was going to say that's too much. This is impressive, but okay. There's a reason bass players are a dime a dozen.
Oof.
I mean, yeah, that's great. He did this on the bass. Fantastic. But, like, James could have done that quadruple the speed on a guitar, so... I'm just kidding, okay? The more I learn about
I'm listening to the song.
I'm waiting for the song to start, because this is just an intro. Okay, I paused it. I don't know if we should have gone into the next song or not, but let's...
It's tough to say. I mean, they do really use that as just like a long intro piece into the next song every time even when they do it live.
Yeah.
But
Do they still do that live and let Jason and Robert do that?
I don't know if I've seen Rob do it. I did see Jason do it before.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, I will say that was a waste of a track on an album.
Well, what if Whiplash had been 9 minutes and that was the first 4?
I haven't seen Whiplash yet. You mean the movie?
Well, I just
right?
mean like if it was 9 tracks of the album, and instead of making this and Whiplash, 2 separate tracks, Whiplash was a 9-minute track with that in the front half of it.
No, I'm glad that they did this. I'm just saying they could have taken that off the album altogether.
Dumb. I disagree. I think that's a great solo.
Yeah, it is a good solo, but you shouldn't have a rock band instrument doing a solo just by itself. Like
it is an odd choice because it's something that makes so much more sense to just be something they do live. Like you wouldn't hear like a track that was a full drum solo on a studio album,
Yeah, you really wouldn't. And like they could have. And okay, before we even got to that song, one of the things I was going to say when we got to the end of this, and I'll say it now because there's probably people mad at me, is that the more that I hear about Cliff Burton, the more it just seems like he was like a cool dude. Like,
yeah,
and
totally.
and from all the people's comments, it seems like a lot of the stuff that I specifically commented that I liked from Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets was directly because of him and his contributions to the albums.
There are a lot of people who think that Metallica died with Cliff. I call him Kurt.
And so like I definitely want to say that. But then I also want to say that I think that was a waste. You know, like
That's fine.
like I think that even if you just have like a kick drum pattern going or something and just like changing it up a little bit, you know, have some sort of a drum pattern going. Like I did think it was neat when the drums came in and there weren't guitars. So it was just the distorted bass, really distorted bass and the drums. That was interesting. You know, we got to hear the way the drums actually sound there without any guitars or anything over the top of them. So that was
very live sounding.
Yeah, that was a nice little sort of, here's how the drums sound without guitars. So that was a nice little moment. But I don't know. To me, that was egregiously long for what it was doing and being. Like if you'd have cut that into a quarter of the length of that was 4 minutes. If you would have done that for 50 seconds and then had the drums come in and then have that go into the next song, which I think you were saying is Whiplash. I thought you were talking about Whiplash the movie. about the drums. That's what I thought you meant. I see. I don't.
That
have,
explains why you said I haven't seen Whiplash yet.
Yeah, I thought you meant the movie, and but I don't have the track listing up when we're talking. I'm looking at you and I'm looking at the camera, so I'm not looking at the track listing. So that's why I didn't know what that's what I meant. But like it would have been better for that to be significantly shorter, then have the drums come in, then have the guitars come in, and have that be the beginning of Whiplash. Just my opinion, though. Like, you know, totally. Like, and I do think that was cool. Everything he was doing was neat, and I would imagine that it's probably way harder to do what he did with the distortion on the bass than if he would have done that just clean. And more novel. I think, you know, how often do you hear something like that from bass in the early 80s? It just especially
seems
not like by itself on an album, maybe underneath everything or as an additional, you know, a lot of the times when you hear bass like that, what they're actually doing is they record the bass direct in and then they take and copy that track and then they reamp it so that there's distortion on the bass, and then they can kind of fold between the two of them, the clean sound and then the distorted sound as well. A lot of metal albums have that, where they take the bass and they just record it clean and then they add a distorted signal over the top of it. So that it was definitely unique, and I love that it started with him saying like, now for the bass solo,
take one,
and also the fact that the song is called like Anesthesia, pulling teeth. It's like funny that they said that, because it was kind of like pulling teeth, like listening to that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And as the Anesthesia too, as well. It's like you're listening to something that's just one instrument, and it's so overly distorted that after a while you do kind of get lulled into a sense of like, okay, how long is this going to last? You know, and then it just keeps going and going. And then like, that is Anesthesia, right? Like that's the effect of Anesthesia. Like, so that's actually like a really cool kind of meta thing. I don't know if that's what they meant with that.
I have no idea.
When I grabbed my phone at the end of the song, that's what I was going to look up, like just the mythos of the song or whatever. But, but yeah, so I don't know. I'm ready to go into Whiplash though. Okay, while you were gone, I looked up. I have to correct something I said, because as soon as I said it, I was like, no, that's wrong.
Okay.
Rob Zombie did not start in the late 70s. He started officially releasing music in the mid to late 80s.
Okay, that makes more sense, because I didn't think he was that old.
As soon as I said it, I was like, no, that's wrong. So the first official White Zombie release was Soul Crusher in 1987.
Great. That tracks really well.
So that, because of course, White Zombie's most famous album from 1995, I think, and then their album from before that, 1992. Well, hold on, I guess I can look right here. Astro Creep 2000 came out in 1994, and then Thunder Kiss 65, which was on their album Los Sexorcisto Devil Music Volume 1, was 1992. So
cool.
Okay, all right, on to Whiplash.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Oh, that reverb trail. Whoa. Whoa, that low tom frequency. He's like rolling on the tom drum. I love it. I love it. Let's do it. Let's all come together and do it.
Yep, here it comes.
Give me a double bass with this. Oh no, but that's all right. Thrash beat's fine. Oh, okay. Uh-oh, bad word in there. Was this style of music referred to as thrash music at this point?
I think so. They've referred to it as that.
Well, I was just wondering if they created that term, but I'm sure they didn't.
Here it comes. Oh, no, that's the next verse.
Oh.
They say a thing I think you're going to laugh at.
Okay. Hey. This is like shades of future Metallica here.
Oh, sure.
Here we go. Here we go. I love it. I love it. Yes! Go back to another verse. Woohoo! Just don't fade out, and you got a perfect Metallica song here. Did they say Metallica? What nerds? Haha, yes! I can almost forgive them for the track before that because that one was so good.
Right, and it's like that lets the lead into Whiplash, so it's like by the
Yeah.
time you get from the beginning to the end, you've had a whole journey.
Again, it's that it's the anesthesia or whatever. Like they're lulling you into that false sense of what's happening, and then they go into that song, which is that's the balls to the wall the entire time that I was talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That yes, bravo, that was great. That was awesome. And they went back to the chorus again at the end, and I can't tell you how much that influences my love of it. Like, oh man. I love it. I love it. I love the solo. I thought it was great. I think that the fact that they did, right? He said Metallica.
Yeah,
in the
we
song.
won't. We'll never stop. We'll never quit because we're Metallica. Is the
Oh
lyric.
my, that is so dumb, and I love it. It's so stupid. Oh,
I know.
that's great.
It's 2 songs on the album now that are about being at a live show. Like,
Which totally makes sense if they were young and they didn't have all
absolutely.
the all
It's
the
just
life
we were talking
experience.
earlier about like the weight and whatever lyrics are about is like early album stuff. Sometimes you get stuff that's not about anything, and this is such a great example of that.
So that
And
had to,
it's not a derision. It's not derision.
That-
It's a funny thing.
that had to have been album closer, right? Or not album closer, show closer or show opener.
I think it's definitely. I mean, I don't know what they have done with that song throughout history, but I know it's, in my experience, one of their encore songs.
Oh, okay.
And they usually play it faster than they do on the album.
That's awesome. Because I bet that would be absolutely them just having fun with that song. I love that. I loved it. That was great.
It was their first single off of this album too, I believe.
That's so funny. I was going to ask you if they had like singles or whatever at this time, and they would have definitely because they would have had to have released like 12-inch singles, I would assume, on records. And I will also say, in my searching for stuff on eBay every now and then, one of the things, I think I told Chris this, but I don't think I told you, Chris, this. One of the things I've been doing more recently is I just go to eBay and I'll just type in metal vinyl, and then I just sort it by time ending soonest.
Oh, interesting.
Just to see what's there. And a vast majority of this stuff is not selling because someone has like one copy of a really rare album and they want like $96 for it plus $50 shipping, and no one bids on it ever. But in my doing that, I've actually ended up getting a couple of really cool deals, but that's besides the point. But because also you can see like, oh, hey, here's a, you know, the one thing I'm looking for is I really want Power Man 5000's Tonight the Stars Revolt on vinyl. I want that really bad, but I'm trying to get it for less than $25. That's my goal.
Oh, sure.
And
is it just because the art on it is so cool, or what?
That also, and also just the fact that like if you, I over the last year or so, I've been trying to figure out my top like 20 favorite albums of all time. I'm trying to create my list.
What a task.
And like, if you were to ask me what the most influential album I've ever listened to is, that would definitely be one of them for sure.
That's a good question. It's interesting.
So Tonight the Stars Revolt would be one of the first albums I ever purchased, and definitely one of the most influential albums I've ever heard. And in terms of my musical taste and stuff. And so I really want it for that. And also it just was released like last year on vinyl. And so there's copies of it floating around, because I also really want Rob Zombie's 2 albums on vinyl as well, because those albums did the same thing for me. Sinister Urge and Hellbilly Deluxe. Like those 2 albums so along with Power Man 5000 really like, and the reason for that is because they were both had songs that were wrestling theme songs. So like, again, it's all WWE getting me into certain music. But anyway, sorry, the reason I bring the eBay stuff up is because I see Metallica singles all the time on there. And some of them are 12-inch, some of them are 7-inch singles, so it's like little 45s. Some of them are just like, you know, whatever. But like the artwork for them is like insane. The artwork for the Creeping Death 12-inch single is like one of the coolest things. It's like this crazy monster thing. It's this animated drawing. It's so cool. I'll put a picture of it up here on screen.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, you can look it up and I'll put a picture of it up there. But like all their singles artwork is so cool. Like I would even say maybe even cooler than like, we should talk about the Kill 'Em All artwork for a second, because to me it looks like the cover of a Stephen King novel, or like a horror paperback novel. I worked at a bookstore for many years, and that's exactly what I think of, like an 80s horror novel. So
yeah, like the shadow of a hand, and
just
very
like
cool.
big broad letters, all bright colors, but a little bit of like a shininess to it, almost like the Stranger Things logo or something like that. And then also just like, the shadow, very simplistic, white background with like a red and black color. You know, I'm not looking at it right now, but
yeah, same.
Did you find the Creeping Death single?
I think so. Yeah, it's got like this road that winds up into like this whole thing, and then there's a skull in the bottom middle. That was the overwhelming search results.
Yeah, I'm not going to take my time to look now, but I'll. But anyway, that's a fun thing to do, and I recommend anyone, if you want to, just search for Metallica vinyl on eBay, and then just cycle through and see what you see.
I'll do that,
because there's a lot of really interesting stuff on there in terms of artwork and just like what's available. A lot of it is just shows, like a one-off show that was either put onto a CD or vinyl. If you want to look for CDs too. But it's interesting. And what I've been trying to do is find a lot, and I've been trying to do this since we started doing this, but I wanted to try to find a lot on eBay that was selling, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, and Kill 'Em All 4 CDs, like to buy for like $20 or whatever, which I've found a bunch of them, because people sell a lot of Metallica CDs like bundled together, but they always sell for quite a bit of money. So
yeah, it
would be cheaper to go to a used CD store eventually and find it. Now, I will say, I did find a CD store in Lincoln, Nebraska very recently, and I walked into it and I almost cried because it was so beautiful to be in a CD store again. But I went and looked in the Metallica pocket, and they had all of the Metallica albums remastered there, like brand new copies on CD. And I was like, every one of them was $15.99. Yeah, which if I just wanted one, I would maybe think about doing it.
But that adds up fast.
But all of them, they just looked so cool though. They're in the digipacks, like they just all looked so neat. And so anyway, all right. Whiplash, my favorite song on the album so far. Probably in my top 10 favorite Metallica songs, I would say. I loved that.
Beautiful.
I loved that.
That's great.
And the fact that it went back to the chorus and that it did not fade in, it did not fade out. There was no fading happening at all. I love this. I loved it. I loved it. Let's see where they go from there. Okay, now we're on to Phantom Lord, which I think is the title of a Star Wars movie or something. I wouldn't know because I don't like Star Wars. Phantom Lord, whatever. Okay, so you ready? 3, 2, 1. What the hell? Is that a synth?
I think it is. I have not. This is a song I've listened to probably the least of all of them.
Shocked I am. As Yoda would say, right? Shocked I am.
Shut up.
Because I know all about Star Wars.
Yep.
Shout out to the tom drums on that last song, too. Okay. Another happy riff. This sounds great. The guitars sound really good here.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe it's because they're playing slightly higher. I don't know. No. What the hell? Okay, that's strange.
What is this face that you're making?
I mean, if I made a song and had delay like that on something, someone would think I had the setting wrong.
Ah.
But it's also
It's gone
kind of
now.
Yeah, it is. It is. Now it's back to the way the delay has been the whole time. Maybe the setting was wrong. Ooh, that's the first, like, guitar harmony. In Flames.
Ooh, yeah.
I was gonna say Godsmack as a joke because I haven't had Godsmack pop up in my video yet here, you know? But no, this is way
Well,
more...
now you have a reason.
I love this, though. Yeah! So that was probably a Cliff Burton part, by the way, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yep. This is great. This is heavy. I mean, you know what? Okay, save my thoughts for afterwards. That's the same ending to a guitar solo he does on Master of Puppets, or Enter Sandman. This is very punky. Not very compressed, I'll give it that. his vocals, I mean.
Oh, sure.
More. Yeah, you go, James. Yeah. Well, the best sounding thing that happened there was the last 5 seconds of the song. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, I applaud them for trying something very different. That was crazy and like really over the top with the effects. Like,
Yeah.
they made the decision to do that, and they committed to it, and I applaud them for doing that. And I don't even necessarily think that it was a bad decision. I think that it gave the song like a bit of like a sci-fi-y feel to me.
I feel like all they would have needed to do was make the delay and the raw vocal the delay is based off of different volumes.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, at the time, that delay was probably printed onto the track or whatever. Like,
Right, and that's the thing I think
mean?
about with stuff like this is like, this is how I would do it now. How
Yeah.
you do it then beats Christ out of me. I couldn't possibly tell you.
Yeah. And so, like, see, to me, when I hear a delay like that on a guitar solo, to me, what I hear, not what I heard in that case, but usually when I would hear lots of delay on a guitar solo, it's hiding imperfections in the solo. So
Sure.
like, if you're playing a song and it's going da 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 da, and you add a delay that's da 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 da, like it makes your solo sound like it's twice as fast, and you can't hear the missing notes because the delay is a repeating. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah, I've used delays for this exact thing. Not
Yeah.
in music, but even in sound design, where it's like I've got a bunch of things happening, and instead of randomly putting them places, I'll do half of them or a third of them, and then just delay the correct out of all of them, and then it sounds like there's a bunch.
yeah, and so like when you do that in music, a lot of times that can be a technique that's used to cover up like not immaturity, bad playing.
Sure.
Right? So like if this is not what happened with this case, but like if they heard that song and they had it mixed normally and Kirk's solos were just like abysmally played and they were like, we only got an hour left in the studio. Okay, let's make this a sci-fi song, put a synth at the beginning, pan his solo all the way to the left, and then delay the snot out of it on the right and have it be like an eighth or 16th delay or whatever. To hide all that, because there's no way you could tell whether what he's playing is right or not, other than if you heard like a wrong note or something. But like, but I don't think that that's what they did. I think that they were like, okay, we're gonna make this song weird,
Yeah.
Because James' vocals at first, I was like, oh my, that is like not correct.
The delay is pretty rough. Like it is unintelligible for a lot of that song.
Oh yeah, just the first half of it, and then they took that away, and it was the same sort of delay that he has had on his vocals the whole album, which, the first track on this album, I thought the vocals were like surprisingly clean and high in the volume in the mix, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And almost every track since then, they've been a little bit lower in the mix, and there's been lots more delays on them, which is what if you would have asked me before we listened to this, what I thought his vocals would have sounded like, I would have thought a lot of reverb, a lot of delay, and that's what we're getting now. But so that was weird choice to have the first half of the song be like so crazy. It was like garbled and unintelligible, like you said. And then after the first sort of like chorusy part, I guess, first guitar solo, it went back to being kind of the way it was before that. I don't know. That song, it sounded like the guitars, like they were playing chords on like the A string instead of the E string. So it sounded way less chuggy and chunky and way more punky feeling. That song felt more punky than thrashy, I thought, which was really interesting. It felt very different from everything we've heard that I remember on any of their albums. Like that sounded like
And
a
I
very
will say
different song.
that breakdown in the middle where it turned into like the slow kind of lewdy kind of thing. I mean, that precursor to Master Puppets, 1,000%.
Exactly,
Like the
100%.
fact that they start doing that so much more often, because we've heard that twice in this album now, and then you get it a lot. how many times you get it in Lightning? I know you get it on Creeping Death. They do it for Whom the Bell Tolls. Orion. That's Puppets. But yeah, I think Puppets is where like you hit the peak of
what's
that type of structure.
What's the outro song on Ride? What's the instrumental song there?
Call of Cthulhu.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm sure they had it in that one too, because I'm sure all those songs are 10 minutes long or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I love that. I love that part. And I thought it was recorded well too.
And I agree. And when you were like, "This is really heavy," I was thinking about your constant fight with Chris about what heavy is.
I know.
Because I was thinking. And I was thinking about that yesterday while I was listening to Chevelle, because I thought, here's a perfect example of a band that does a lot of really, really heavy stuff and never plays fast. And I want to go just beat him to death with one of their songs.
and would you ever consider Chevelle to be a metal band?
I don't know what I would consider them to be that's more appropriate than a metal band. But I could see how you would ask that.
Well, again, I only know the few songs of theirs, and there are heavy moments in it, but like I don't consider Korn to be a metal band. So
interesting. What do you consider them to be?
Nu metal.
Oh, sure. And I think
to me, nu metal is
probably
different.
Has a lot of roots in nu metal in terms of just what their style is.
Oh no, I would definitely call them a nu metal band. That's what I would call Chevelle.
That's totally fair.
But then if you ask me,
sorry. I was just saying they've got a handful of songs. Like Chevelle, whenever people complain about how all Chevelle songs sound the same, I consider that to be kind of a good thing, because I think that their sound rules and they don't need to do anything different.
You like their formula.
For them to change the world. Yeah, I like Chevelle, and like based on the fact that they do that, I think there's a lot of dependability in like, oh, new Chevelle music, 12 songs I'm gonna love,
gonna be good. Yeah,
but they do have a handful of songs that like get really, really heavy. And then we can go into the whole thing about how they sound a lot like Tool very often, which is
right.
A very cool
would
thing.
I consider Tool to be a metal band? I don't know. That's really
a tough
interesting.
One to say. Yeah, really tough question.
Especially because I know even less Tool than I know Chevelle. So
right, and I think I could give you some Chevelle songs where you'd be like, "Wow, this is
metal.
Great."
Yeah,
and,
probably.
Yeah, but I think that if we ever do a video where we have an argument for 4 hours about what heavy is, where we just beat Chris to death until he never comes back, and that'll be the band that I use as my like go-to. Like, listen to all of these, and you tell me that this isn't heavy.
See this again, and we shouldn't dwell on this and talk about it, but like, I have been thinking about that conversation nonstop as well, which for those of you who are watching this video, you don't know what we're talking about. That is part of our Black album reaction video. We spent quite a long time discussing what makes things heavy and what the difference is between heavy and extreme and things like that. Intense.
Fast.
Yeah. And so... And we do, by the way, because I know we were talking before we started filming, and Chris Parker was saying that he doesn't really look at the comments of our videos too much because he doesn't want to, which I totally
I'm mostly
understand.
just worried about being ripped apart by strangers. But you keep telling me that everybody likes me the best, so I might go start reading them.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them are really good comments, and so, but we have had several of people saying like, "Oh yeah, I never equate speed with heaviness ever." A lot of people have said that. Like,
some smart people.
One person even said that like speed is the antithesis of heavy because the qualities that you would look for in heavy music are literally the opposite that what is being represented with fast music. And so I've been
bright listeners.
And so I have been thinking about that so much, Chris, because the other thing I keep thinking about is, and this is another peek behind the curtain, people, and we'll see if I choose to leave all this stuff in or not, but I
think most of it should stay.
Yeah, Chris Schoenberg brought up the idea for us to do a video with the three of us where we have 3 or 4 songs that represent what music is like to us.
Yeah, well, our favorite, like what our favorite music is, and what is the best representation.
Yeah, representation of our musical tastes summed up in 3 or 4 songs, and I want to push.
I think about it every day.
I think about it. I've thought about it every day since he said that.
It
Me too. I agree 100%. Plus, I thought, there's 3 of us. If each of us pick 4, that's 12 songs total. That's like a full album. That's like doing a full album reaction.
That'd be an excellent album.
Yeah. So I have been thinking about that nonstop. And then the other thing that I keep thinking about is that, and no one has told me this, but for some reason, because I've known Chris Schoenberg for so long, and we have done this battle for as long as I've known him, where I'm like, hey, look at this really cool thing. Listen to this really cool song. And he'll listen to it, and he'll be like, nah, it's not for me. It's just not for me. And it's
Fair,
like,
sure.
I know why it's not for him, because he doesn't enjoy music that has singing in it. He wants music to be extreme all the time.
No, thank you.
But he likes things like Selena Gomez and stuff like that. So like he can listen to pop music and country music and polka music and whatever. But like
Polka music.
well, and I only say that because he for like 10 years in a row he ran sound for this huge polka festival in Montana. And so he would go up there for like a week and do like 20 polka bands over the course of a week. But
I thought you said that because of how much you personally hate polka music.
I do hate polka music, but that's because it's like my heritage, and I grew up being forced to listen to it every Sunday. On the radio.
I see. That's okay.
But and also every polka song sounds the exact same. But my point was going to be that no one has presented Metallica to me as being like, hey, this is the heaviest band of all time. But for some reason, to me, it's like when you're arguing with someone and you just, I don't know how to say this, but like when I listen to it's like I'm offended by how unheavy Metallica is. Like, and again, you never said to me, Chris Schoenberg never said to me like, hey, you have to listen to Metallica. They're the heaviest, fastest, greatest band of all time. No one ever said that. It was always just presented to me, and it was my idea to do these videos.
Osmosis, yeah.
It was presented to me as like, hey, Metallica's a really great band. You should learn this. But it's just like in my core to fight against like, well, Nightwish has 20 songs that are faster and heavier than the heaviest, fastest Metallica songs.
I'm sure they do.
And you know, there's every band that I like. Power Man 5000 has songs that are heavier than heavy, you know. And so the last couple of weeks I've just been listening to all this music, and I'm just like, yep, this is heavier than Metallica. Yep, this is heavier than Metallica. Yep, this is faster than Metallica. Yep, this is a better guitar solo than Kirk can play. Yep, this is better drumming than Lars can do it. And I found myself, after a while, I was just like, why am I doing this? Nobody told me that Lars was the greatest drummer of all time and that he was the only person that should ever drum on a heavy song ever. No one told me that Kirk was the greatest guitar player of all time. No one told me that Metallica was the heaviest band of all time. It is like on me, and I've just been... You're
just arguing with yourself.
Yeah, totally. And it's this strange thing, and I don't know where it came from. Well, I think it comes from the desire to be justified in the music that I like, that Chris does not, or that you do not, you know? It's like, no. Listen, you know, this is heavier than Metallica. And
I think based
what's
on
the
what
point?
you told
no
me,
one said that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's one thing that you've thought based on what I've thought based on what you told me about him just now is like, I don't know how much of my music would overlap with him, and especially in terms of metal and what's heavy, because I think that all of his stuff, I need there to be singing.
Yep.
I need it to like hit that, you know, if it's going to go wild, go there, but come back, you know? And I think that you and I would have much higher overlap in heavy music for sure.
And the thing is, I think that I listen to way heavier music than you do on normally.
I would agree with that.
Like on the average. Because
you like things like the Browning, which is like
no clean
good,
vocal
but
ever.
That's never going to fit into my rotation.
Yeah, that, and also just like I said last year with the Damnum by Allegiant, right? That's the heaviest album I think I've ever heard. And
I would never listen to that album.
It was my number 11 for the year. Like, I liked it more than so many other albums. And so, like, part of me is always just like, why? Like, I don't know. I guess, like I said, I'm seeking, like, justification. I'm seeking, like, I don't know what it is. But anyway,
validation.
Sorry. Validation is, yes. Seeking that. But it's all just so fun. Anybody who's watching this, if I leave this whole conversation in the video, like, this is the kind of stuff we talk about all the time, always. Like, we always have these conversations. And it's so fun for me because Chris and I have these conversations. Other Chris and I have these conversations. And to have all three of us together, it's like a whole new world of conversations can be opened, you know? And because you and Chris Schoenberg could have the same conversations that you and I have had for so many years, you know, but there'd be the extra wrinkle
with different
of it being
points.
a different person with different points. Exactly. Okay, sorry. Let's get back into Metallica because we've already been recording for 2.5 hours and we still got 3 songs to go. Oh my God.
I don't know why you think these will ever be shorter than 3 hours.
Because
it has been this way. It's been this way for a decade, man.
I know. But when I do these videos myself, I can now get it down to 2 hours, but below 2 hours each video. So, and I guess there's an extra person here telling me their thoughts. So, you know, okay, we've got 2 long songs now. We've had like several relatively shorter songs. That last song was a little bit longer with 5 minutes, but now we've got a 6.5 minute song. So, all right, this is No Remorse. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Whoa. Is this an instrumental?
No.
Okay. Whoa, that bass totally ended at the wrong time there. Yeah, that was not good. Unless it was meant to be that way, but... Minute-long intro before we get vocals here. Okay. Yeah!
That's very 80s sounding.
Yes. I love that. That was great. Again with that ride cymbal. Mm-hmm. All album long. That delay on the guitar.
Yeah, that goes to the other side. Interesting.
Remind me to tell you something about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Feels like the bass is a little ahead of it though. The bass has like less definition in this. The bass sounds different.
Yeah. It's sort of just sitting in the only lows where the kick is.
Yeah. And there's no high frequency to it anymore. Mm-hmm. Whoa, this is weird. That's Metallica riff.
Isn't it?
Yes. His solos have sounded weird this song.
They're like, yeah, there's this weird layer of reverb. He's like way far away somewhere.
I almost wonder if they recorded them and it didn't sound as good, so they added the effects to mask that. That first solo had like this weird filter sweep on it. That felt really sloppy. Maybe it was just
the way that his guitar came in with the same effect from the solo. It was almost like, oops, forgot to turn that effect off.
Yeah, seriously, yes. Back to more verses, more vocals though, like that.
Almost anime sounding. Very Trigun.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Twisted Metal. Rob Zombie better be in that Twisted Metal show on Peacock.
You're going to need to tell me about that.
Comes out July. Hey, we're doing a thrash now. Yes, back to more vocals. Vocals are really low, though.
They are.
Hey, he said lightning. That's foreshadowing. Okay, yeah. Sounds like he's blowing bubbles with his bass. Okay, Metallica.
Yep, doing that thing that they do.
That thing that they
we
do.
complained about so much on 72 seasons.
Here's where they all started.
Yep.
Okay.
First of all, this song is about a soldier who is sent to war and kills without question or remorse.
Okay.
It criticizes the brutal nature of war and suggests that soldiers are often forced into morally ambiguous situations where they must choose between following orders and doing what is right. The lyrics also suggest that the soldier in the song has become numb to the horrors of war and has lost his sense of humanity. And that is all really very much in line with things that they sing songs about all the time.
Yeah,
There
for sure.
is at least 1 to 3 songs on almost every album that has to do with soldiers and war.
Okay,
James
sure.
writes about that a lot.
That's awesome. That sounded cool to me. I was shocked that there were so many vocals in that song.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking, okay, we're gonna get another song, another long song. Are they gonna do the 2.5 minutes and then 5 minutes of solos? Instead, they did have a long solo in the middle, but then it went back to vocals, and then they started that thrash part. And you know how you were talking with 72 Seasons that, you know, it almost felt like they came up with a cool riff and they did it, but they didn't do it for long enough. You know, it was like they didn't stay with it long enough. They had that cool thrash riff, and they had the last 2 minutes of the song is that thrash riff pretty much.
Yeah, different type of song for like the last, yeah.
Yeah, but they kept going back to the vocals again, and then the riff would change to the half tempo riff compared to the thrash part. And so yeah, I liked that song a lot.
I mean, compare that to, you know, Hit the Lights or Jump in the Fire. Like it almost feels like you can see them evolving their music as a band through just the course of this album.
Yeah, I mean there was definitely hints there of a lot of future Metallica.
Oh yeah,
Very interesting. Very interesting.
and it has made me realize how much old Metallica there is in 72 Seasons. Like I've been listening to that album a lot, and I've been liking it quite a bit more as I've listened to it. And yeah, I hear so many different things. It's like, oh, there's that spot. There's that thing that just sounds just like what we were talking about in the other video we did.
See, for me, when I hear this, all I want to do now is just go listen to Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets again. Like, I wish we could just listen to it right now. Like, just put on Ride the Lightning and just listen to it now. You know, like
I really love listening to albums back to back in the order they came out to just hear bands' evolutions.
Sure. Yeah, it's great. I loved it. All right, let's go on to here we are. We're at Seek and Destroy, baby. Let's just do it.
You got it.
Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. What a badass riff. It sounds very different from what we've heard so far. Right?
Really split, way up close.
Dry.
Yeah, true.
A lot of low frequencies in the guitars here. I'm pretty sure the version I heard those live was like twice as fast as that.
Oh, they
It
do
feels
play this
like it.
faster too usually.
The guitars are totally different. Actually, they might be more like they were on track 2.
Bum, bum, ba-dum.
Vocals louder, more present.
Yep, true. And this song is not particularly fast.
No. Whoa.
Ooh, never heard that before.
Okay, how many times are you going to repeat this part? I think the snare might sound a little better here too, or at least more present.
More present for sure.
I haven't been paying attention to the snare as much.
Same.
This sounds way closer to the guitars on Justice. Just totally dry. They're probably more distorted here though.
Yeah.
The bass is like non-existent.
And this?
Yeah. Like I feel like so much of the lows are coming from the guitars.
That little thing in the back is him.
Yeah, I hear the bass, but it's not.
No, I know, but it was like that, wow, you know, the really heavy, super far away distorted
Yeah.
thing. That's the little bass thing he was doing. I just realized that.
Ah. Now that was a little sloppy.
Which part?
The rhythmic part there, the guitars. Or it felt sloppy to me, I don't know. This just feels like a whole different song from a whole different album. Is this their biggest song off this album?
I think so. Bark, bark.
I mean, this riff could be on Black Album.
I think, yeah, even just based on the speed of the song in general, it fits better
Yeah,
with
that's
the
true,
later
yeah.
stuff. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum.
I just can't get over how different it feels. Like, I almost feel like I have to turn the volume down because it's too loud.
This is Ozzy sounding.
Yeah. Wow.
This is almost Tool sounding.
I guess. And the way that they did it, like half tempo with the drums there for a while, and then coming back in at the regular tempo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's.
See? That was almost 7 minutes and didn't feel like it at all.
Well, no. I think that. The mix of that just threw me off so much that I don't even know. Like, I don't know. I like that song a lot, but I will say, honestly, I feel like slightly disappointed just because I was expecting more gang vocals. Like I was expecting running on our hands.
Oh, sure.
Down and then, you know, and then searching, take out this. Like I guess I was, I don't know.
That song kills live, if you can believe it.
I do believe it because that's the only version I've heard is the live version. Remember?
Sure. Fair, fair.
So like since we started doing this Metallica reaction stuff on my channel, I have been wanting to go back and listen to that song on that WCW compilation, and I have not done it because
I'm curious which one it is.
Yeah, because I wanted to wait. Yeah, maybe I'll look it up when we're done here. But yeah, okay. So that song just sounded sonically different from everything else on the album.
Yeah,
like, that sounded like it was mixed on a whole different day with different tools by a different person and totally different. So very interesting. I liked it. Maybe I liked the way it sounded more than the rest of the album, but I don't know. I don't know. The vocals were drier. The snare was drier. The guitars had a lot more low end in them. That's why I was saying it felt a little bit more like And Justice for All. Very interesting. But yeah, when I hear that intro riff, dun dun da da dun da da dun 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 da da dun da, it makes me think of Sting in WCW. I think he only came out to that song for like a little while because he had other more famous songs than that he used, but that he did use that song for a while. Interesting. I wanted to say last song and I forgot, but I wanted to tell you about that when the guitar stopped and you could just hear the one guitar on one side and you could hear it kind of echo.
Oh yeah,
on the
that's
other
right.
side. This is not necessarily what they were going for there, but I think they probably were. But there's I've talked to you about this technique before, but the listener, people watching might not know. There's a technique in mastering called cross-pan delay, which of everything that I learned when I was in college, learning about mixing and different things like that, it was one of my favorite, if not my favorite thing I ever learned. Conceptually and also just like hearing it in execution. Like when you hear something cross-pan delayed, like it's like one of the most simple mastering things that I would do when I'm mastering something, because to me it just fills them in, it mix in so much. It makes everything feel like it's all one thing so much. And the technique is very simple. You just take your stereo track when you have the song done, and what you do is you take and you double the tracks. So you have the left track and the right track, and then you duplicate those. So you have another left track and another right track. And you reverse the two tracks. So the left is now the right and the right is now the left. And then you put a delay on each one that's within the fusion zone. So between 21 milliseconds and 0. So usually around 19 or so.
What is the fusion zone?
The fusion zone is if you take a sound and you put a delay on it, and if you listen to it and it sounds like one sound.
Oh, okay.
Like
so the
you
fusion
hear an
zone
echo.
within how far the delay out, like
before
how
you
long the
hear an
delay is.
echo. 21 between 19 and 23 milliseconds is the amount you can put a delay on something where it still sounds like one sound. After 23 milliseconds, you start to hear a delay. an echo,
Okay.
an echo effect, right? So you can use that when you take a mono. Here, I'll do it with my voice right now. I take a mono signal and I pan it all the way to the left, and I take that same exact signal and pan it all the way to the right, but add that delay on it. It now sounds like I'm a giant stereo sound.
Yeah.
Rather than being just mono. But the thing with that is there's almost nothing in the middle. You can't hear anything in the middle anymore. So, but anyway, that's sort of the same concept that you do with cross pan delay. You do that same thing, but you do it with both tracks and then you reverse them. And what you're doing is you're taking a little bit, and what you do then is you bring the volume down all the way to 0, and then you listen to just the left track, and then its counterpart, pan to the right, with the delay on it within the fusion zone, and you bring the delay down to infinite. You bring the delay down to zero, like beyond infinite. And then you listen to it and you slowly bring the delay up till you can just barely hear that it's coming in. And then you bring it down like 5 dB. Maybe it's too much. Maybe like
5 sounds like a lot.
Couple dB. But it's the point is like you bring it up till you hear it and then you lower it so you don't really notice it. And then the thing is, if you mute it, you can tell it went away, but you can't like hear it audibly. Then you do the same effect to the other side, and what happens is it takes what's on the left and puts a little bit of it in the right, takes what's in the right, puts a little bit of it to the left, and it really fills the whole mix in. It really thickens the whole thing, and it makes it feel very nice, in my opinion.
That's very good to know.
Yeah, and it really is it's a mastering technique, and it's like all songs that you hear everywhere probably have that done to them, at least to some extent. And nowadays with plugins and things, there's probably cross pan delay plugins that you put on a thing and it just automatically does it to things. So probably a lot of people who make like the Infected Mushroom or something, who make like a song with the 4 tracks going, this giant kick, giant snare, sub bass, and then another track of like a sound effects, like everything probably has bits of that on it to make everything feel enormous and huge and everything. But the other thing you do is you high pass filter that at like a certain thing, because you don't want the low frequencies to start muddling everything up. So you high pass filter the tracks at like, or you take all the lows away at like 80 hertz and below, because you don't need any of that low stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I wanted to mention that because that's essentially the effect they were doing on the guitar, right? When you heard it on the left, you heard the exact same track delayed on the right, but very low. What they're doing is they're doing that same exact effect in the mix. And then when you have the stereo tracks, you do it again, and it remasters, and that's just a part of mastering. So
Great.
Sorry,
Very
that was
cool.
probably too long to go for that explanation, and I think
No, I don't know. I think that is really neat. That's the kind of thing that's going to be different from anybody else doing this. So that's the kind of stuff people are
and
doing.
you hear that all over. That's why it just makes sense to delay something and have the delay on the other side, because it makes things sound bigger, right? But you can get
I've never done that, but I will now.
Well, I mean, you can get into problems because it can have frequencies start to bundle up in the middle, which is why you high pass everything. So, okay, last track, Metal Militia. I'm curious to see if this is an instrumental or not, because we already had an instrumental with Anesthesia. So, all right, ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Totally different mix. Completely.
There's so much bass in this.
This sounds way better than the previous song and everything we've heard so far.
Weird.
I mean, this sounds better than Ride the Lightning. That crazy reverb. That cavernous reverb. Yeah, a lot of bass here. Yes, vocals.
This is Motorhead, man.
I can't believe this sounds so good.
That's Motorhead-ish.
Whoa. There you can hear the compression his vocals are having on the guitars.
I wondered if that's what I was hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can literally hear the vocals, the guitars dip.
Mm-hmm.
That might be on the mastering, the remaster.
Oh,
or
sure.
Or just the original mastering.
Why wouldn't it be on the rest of the tracks?
Wow, that's egregious.
It is pretty, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Cliff Burton. Key change. Wow! Wow! And that was recorded twice and then panned sideways.
We are as one as we are all the same, fighting for one cause. Together in battle, our uniform, protecting what we are. Joining together to take on the world.
And he's struggling really hard.
Message to everyone here, don't let yourself go. Oh, through the mist of the madness, trying to get the message to you. Metal Militia. Metal Militia.
I just remembered how this ends.
Metal Militia. Metal Militia. Metal Militia.
Oh,
Metal Militia. Metal Militia.
Does that count?
no, not to me.
Good.
I mean, I've had to make a lot of leeway with my fade outs rule, you know. So if there's any
Yeah.
intention of something continuing on, like and actually ending, then I pretty
Yeah.
much give it a pass. Okay, I want to look up because those last two songs to me sounded totally different from everything else, and I am curious if they were recorded at a different time. Because
Okay.
then I was thinking, and I don't remember if I read this somewhere or not, but like maybe did they go into a recording studio and record like a couple songs, and then those are the two songs that a record label heard and were like, okay, well we'll do a whole album. Because if that was the case, then I wonder if those last two songs were the songs that they. Okay, okay, this is really interesting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, how this was recorded is crazy. So let me just read a little bit of this here.
Mm-hmm.
It says, well, first of all, they fired Mustaine on the morning of April 11th, or it doesn't matter. They fired Mustaine because of his alcohol problems, overly aggressive behavior, and clashes with bandmates. It says, on Whitaker's recommendation, Metallica recruited Kirk Hammett, who played in Exodus, which is a band I've heard of, and was a one-time student of Joe Satriani, who I've also know of. It says he learned the songs on his flight to New York and started recording with the band less than a month later. And then it says, now this is where it gets interesting. Metallica, they wanted to record the album with a guy for $8,000, but the guy bailed, and so they had to go record it with someone else, basically.
Okay.
So then this says, Metallica met with producer Paul Curcio, Curcio, I don't know how to pronounce that, at Music America Studios in Rochester and recorded the album in 2 weeks. And then it says, unable to afford a hotel during the recording sessions, the band members stayed over at people's houses, and they stayed with the band member, where they stayed in a place where the band Anthrax held rehearsals. But this is the interesting part. The guy, Curcio, well, I'll just call him Curcio because I don't know how else to pronounce it, had set the studio equipment as if he were recording an ordinary rock band. He thought the initial tapes sounded very distorted and tried to compensate by turning down the knobs of the amps and stuff. Metallica resented his involvement because he seemed uninterested and had little impact on the sound. Although Zazula wanted Hammett to replace Mustaine's solos, Hammett's guitar solos on the album were partially all based on Mustaine's original solos, with the first 4 bars of almost all the solos written by Mustaine before his departure, which is really interesting.
Yes.
Despite the differences, Mustaine's contributions to the early years of Metallica were still acknowledged, blah, blah, blah. And then it says here, Zazula was not pleased with the initial mix because he thought that the drums were too loud and the guitars were too low in the mix.
Who's Zazula?
I'd have to go back up to see who that is.
Okay.
I'll get that in a second.
Sure.
The remix was done by sound engineer Chris Bubox, which is funny. According to Zazula's instructions, the final cost for the record rounded out to an estimated $15,000, which nearly caused Zazula to go bankrupt. He was spending his mortgage, blah, blah, blah. Zazula had a hard time finding a distributor for the record, but he eventually convinced blah, blah, blah. The band intended to title the album Metal Up Your Ass, with the cover featuring a hand and dagger. Okay, so let me find out who Zazula was. Okay. So he was, the producer or the recording engineer, basically. Because they were supposed to record with this guy for $8,000, and the guy could not afford to record the album for that. So Lars Ulrich contacted John Zazula, a New Jersey record store owner and promoter of heavy metal bands on the East Coast, who had already heard their album or their demo, No Life Till Leather. Metallica rented a U-Haul truck and drove to New Jersey in late March, and upon arrival allowed Zazula to sell copies of their album, of their No Life Till Leather, to help him fund Megaforce Records, because no label wanted to finance the album's recording. So there was a lot of trouble with this, basically. And basically the guy that recorded everything mixed it, and they didn't like the way he did it. So the guy who was sort of funding the whole thing had to hire another guy to remix the album.
Interesting.
Which to me would speak to the inconsistencies across the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when I first started reading there, they were talking about how they were getting their songs, and a lot of them came from other bands that the guys were in. So, like like their first, well, I'm not going to look it up because it'd take too long, but a couple of the songs at the beginning of the album, at least, were songs that like one of the members had written or contributed to a band that they were in prior to starting Metallica, and so they like took songs from other projects and stuff and made them their own. From what I was reading on there, at least. So that was interesting. But yeah, $15,000. Insane. Okay, so now that I've heard Metallica's first album, I'm a little bit conflicted because I think there were parts of it that I liked a lot, but it's not as consistent as I wanted it to be. So the inconsistencies kind of are a little bit disappointing.
Sure.
But that's kind of to be expected. I do feel like the other Metallica albums are all more consistent among themselves. Like Ride the Lightning is Ride the Lightning all the way through.
Yeah.
And so is all their other albums. They don't feel, like a compilation album or anything. And I would wonder if maybe one of the reasons for that is because they had kind of a crappy situation happen with their first album. So they were like, we're not doing that again. We're going to be a little bit more in control of stuff moving forward, right?
Yeah, and I think that it makes a lot of sense for a band making their first album in the early 80s with very little money to end up with something that's going to be inconsistent, especially in a situation like this where they're like, no, I don't like what you're doing. This is done, but it's not so good. Keep throwing different hands at it as much as you can within budget.
Yeah.
And just hoping that you get something decent.
Yeah, for sure. So that's really crazy. I think that
I'd love to hear that original mix.
Me too, with the higher drums, lower guitars, and less distortion or whatever. But I don't think they re-distorted anything. I think the guitars probably always sounded that way. But I'm wondering if they added more high frequencies to them to make them sound more distorted. I'm really curious. That last song, the compression was like egregious and bad, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, that's that
especially
sidechain.
for some reason on that second verse, like when James was like being more dynamic, the guitar, you could just hear the vocals, the guitars drop in volume. And that was really upsetting to me, because before that happened, I thought that was the best sounding song on the album. I thought, because it really sounded totally different to me. That's crazy. Okay, so let me look at the song list here. Definitely my favorite track was Whiplash.
Yeah.
But also, which one was the one with the bass that was just was that Jump in the Fire?
I think so, yeah.
Because Jump in the Fire was one of the songs that they took from a different band
Interesting.
that one of the other one of the members was in before this.
That's really interesting.
So that is really interesting to think that. So, yeah.
What a hodgepodge.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so interesting that one of the most influential albums of all time can be this total hodgepodge, like taped together mess.
Yeah.
That barely exists.
But the funny thing too, though, is if you think about it, like if you think about like a Michael Jackson album, for example, or something, like every one of those songs sounds like a completely different song, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the quality, I would say, probably stays consistent, you know, but so I don't even think the inconsistency bothers me really too much. It's just that the idea, like the things that are the things that are inconsistent, you know, I don't mind so much if every song sounds a little bit different from the previous songs, but to me, one of the reasons you would do that on purpose is because there's different elements happening in each song, and so you want to treat each song as its own individual song, you know. Almost every band that I love, that's how they treat their music. Every song is an individual song. And you just work on each song, making it sound as good as you can. And then it's mastering's job at the end to kind of make it feel a little bit more cohesive. But it doesn't have to feel cohesive because it's not a full single story. It's just a compilation of your songs, which is what a lot of people do nowadays. They just record a song, release it as a single. Next month, record another song, release it as a single. After 12, do that 12 months in a row, and you got an album, right? So there's no continuity there whatsoever. However, that being said, the things that were different from song to song, which I do feel like there was more differences from song to song on this album than any of the other Metallica albums. Because like one song had the crazy delay, one song started with that weird synth thing, one song was really fast, and there was a weird bass thing in the middle of the album. One song was, you know,
so much of it is like, what do we like? What do we want to sound like? What are all of these effects? You know, because I imagine with their demo tapes and stuff, they didn't have delays available. I've listened to Known Life to Leather, and I tell you right now, rough. So, just early '80s demo tapes, like there's nothing less listenable in the world. So it's like, you know, we've got access to all these different effects. Let's throw a delay on this vocal, see what happens. Yeah, that's rad. Let's try some more reverb on here. You know, just really trying to see what they like.
Let's have the guitar solo start over here and then slowly work its way across the stereo spectrum over here.
And like, when did stereo start being commonplace?
In the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, so that in the 60s for sure. With 4-track. When they started recording albums to 4-track, because that was with like the Beatles and stuff, when they would just have like, you really could only have something far left or far right, and then what you could do is you could have two things far left and two things far right. And if you wanted to have something in the middle, you could have one thing on the far left, one thing on the far right, and then put the other thing in both far left and far right, which made it sound like it was in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not an expert on that stuff either, but that's why when you get into the 60s, like with some of the stuff that I love, like Nancy Sinatra and a lot of Beatles is like that too, there's nothing in the middle. It's just, okay, we're going to have Nancy Sinatra and the drum kit on the left, and then an orchestra and the bass on the right.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I was my thought process for that was like, in a world where stereo is brand new and a novelty, people are going to do all kinds of wild stuff with it because they can do it now for the first time.
Oh, and they
that
did.
It sounds like what you're dealing with.
They did. That's
much
stupid.
wilder than what we're dealing with.
I was just
here.
talking about that with Cody in our Talking Heads video about that stupid. I'm not a fan of, I don't know much about the Beatles, but that one stupid song where Paul McCartney is playing the guitar, and his guitar and his vocals are off to the right, and the left is just the sound of him tapping his foot on the ground. It's a song about a bird or something. I hate it. It's like one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. And it's like a classic Beatles thing, I guess. It's like considered
that foot tapping thing sounds familiar to me, but I don't think I knew
just,
that they were
you just
mixed
hear him
that way,
tapping his foot
awful.
on one side, and on the other side is the song. It's so
That's garbage.
stupid.
Just take an ear off.
Or just listen to the Beatles mono mixes because those are better in a lot of cases.
Yeah, wow.
But anyway, I digress with that. So I like the effects that were done here. There was lots of stuff. Like when we listened to Ride the Lightning, Chris Schoenberg was sort of surprised with how many effects there were actually on the album. Like he was surprised with how many like recording things, like mix techniques and things were done with swoops and all these things. And there wasn't a ton of like overdubbing on this album. Like I only noticed one moment where there was the guitar harmony going on at all.
Yeah.
Just one moment for like a little 5-second measure or something where you could hear guitar harmonies happening. So knowing that, and then how much harmonizing and stuff there is on Ride the Lightning and how different Ride the Lightning is and how much more consistent Ride the Lightning is, that's pretty crazy to think that it was only like 3 years later that no, I guess Ride the Lightning was 84.
84.
Wasn't it? Yeah, so that was only 1 year later. Wow. That's crazy. So that probably tells me that Ride the Lightning was probably more the album that they wanted to make, but they just didn't necessarily know how. Maybe.
Interesting. Sure. I can dig that.
But also the fact that like on Kill 'Em All, like a lot of the solos were written by Dave Mustaine, and then Kirk just like learned them and then played them and then messed with them a little bit. And some of the songs were taken from other bands, like that Fire song or whatever it is. I'm not looking at the lyrics.
Jump in the Fire, yeah.
Yeah, that song was the only song I've ever heard Metallica do that is just like boots, 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 like bass, which I thought was great, and I loved it for that. It totally didn't feel like a Metallica song really because of that, but now knowing that was sort of taken from a different band or something like that someone else had written, that makes sense. And so if you take that song out of it and you take a couple other things and you put in a few more thrashy things, then it would feel much more consistent along with Ride the Lightning. So very curious. Now also, Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets both start with acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
There was only one moment of acoustic guitar on this album, and that was in which I can't remember which song it was. Was it? It was where they had the acoustic guitar, where the song broke down, and it was like the acoustic, the slow
it was
part.
probably either Horsemen or Phantom Lord.
Must have been.
One.
I wasn't Horseman then, because it was towards the middle of the album. We were talking. I was like, "This is In Flames." Remember?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
that's
that was the
Phantom Lord,
only
pretty
instance
sure.
of acoustic guitar that I heard on the album. So yeah.
And that one song, same song actually, the only instance of synth I've ever heard in a Metallica song.
Yeah, for sure. Really interesting. Loved that though. It just gave it like it should have been called Space Lord instead of Phantom Lord, and it would have been like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it still had like a spacey feel to me because of all those things. So yeah, I don't know. They tried weird things. Knowing that the album was mixed and they didn't like it and it was remixed is interesting. And I can't imagine the pressure on that second mixing engineer to take something that's already been mixed and be like, try to do this better because we didn't like the way it was done before. Which I have done that once or twice with a few projects, actually. Had someone give me 5 sessions for a song, basically, because they weren't happy with it and said, do this as good as you can or do what you can with this. That's a lot of pressure. I don't know if it would be as much pressure on a band that was like their first album and they didn't necessarily know what they were doing so much. And it was because of the guy that was like funding the thing didn't like it. So that's kind of tough. Like I imagine that guy being pretty overbearing in the studio, like, do this, and the mixing engineer's going, okay, fine, I guess we'll do that, So I don't know. How do you feel about it having listened to it now? When was the last time you listened to this album?
I mean, it comes up occasionally. It has been a while since I actually
I was curious about that.
Heard it really? Because if you give me a stack of Metallica albums, I will always jump to something before I jump to this album.
That's what I was gonna say. Is this your least listened to Metallica album?
Honestly, yeah, I think that's a true statement. I have listened to this one the least.
Is it your least favorite?
No. Mm-mm.
Really?
No, I would say.
I'm really curious now. No, also knowing that Lulu doesn't count.
Lulu does not count. It absolutely does not. I would say my least favorite is probably Load.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Interesting.
There's several songs on Load that I do like, for sure. And some that I recognize, it's like, this is not so bad. It's really empty and stupid. in a way that's not as much fun as Whiplash. But yeah, I don't know. I think Load would probably be the one I like the least.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll work on my ranking of the albums so we can do it when we're done. But I don't know. I need to listen to them all again more. I really need to do that, and then I will do that. And then when we have,
I did. I recently went through and ranked my favorite Metallica albums in order, and I don't remember what the order was. I just know that it took a lot of work, and I had like a little chart where it was like, okay, here's the song list from every album. These are my favorite songs from each album. They go into this category.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, now how do these compare to these? You know, do I like this song more than I like this song? You know, I basically turned it into like a sports bracket.
Yep,
and then whichever album had the most favorite songs left over at the end. And it was based on percentage too. Like what percentage of songs is left over at the end.
Sure.
Where it's like you've got a 12 song album and an 8 song album, for example. And it's like you've got 4 here and 2 here, but whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it ended up, Justice came out mathematically to be the one that I like the most.
Okay.
But I don't remember what the rest of them were.
You'll have to try to figure that out, because that's definitely will be one thing that you and I and Chris do, is have to rank all the Metallica albums. I definitely want to make sure we do that in our
that's going to be fun
Metallica.
to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So what happens with me and Metallica is that, unless in a situation like this where we've got a new album, so I'll listen to this throughout the year. But generally, they are not in my main rotation, so to speak. But anytime I get a hankering for some Metallica, I will usually just end up listening to only Metallica for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. Just going back through everything.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing that as well. Like, I won't necessarily listen to a band for a while, but then I'll be like, okay, I think it's been a while. I'm ready to go through, and I'll go back through their discography or whatever. Sometimes all the way through, sometimes not. But yeah, I can relate to that. Okay, well, I think we did this album justice.
I think so.
And we've recorded for way longer than we needed to, so I don't need to make this always do. We don't need to make this outro very long. But I was telling someone just the other day, someone was asking me something about what is my favorite musical memory or something. And one of the first things that came up to me was when you went and got Random Access Memories, and I went to your house and we sat and listened to the album for the first time together, just on the couch, and listened to the entire album from front to back. It was the first time I ever listened to an album with a person all the way through, and I don't know if I would be doing this channel if it wasn't for that. That was one of the best experiences I ever had. And
that's so funny, because so often I think about one of the reasons why I do any of this and any of the stuff that I do with music is because of that time you asked me why I like Under the Influence of Giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, what do you like about it? And it's like, I don't know, and then I just think about that question all the time.
Yeah, I've told that on my channel before too. Like, my whole life changed when I started asking myself why I like certain things.
And I still can't answer that all the time.
Yeah,
so hard.
It's a hard thing to do, for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, we can end the video here because I said we weren't going to talk, and then we did for another 10 minutes.
Yep,
so
Midwestern goodbye. Classic.
Yep, exactly. I am going to legit end it here, though, and say thank you very much for watching. Yesterday, the brand new Death Stars album came out, and I have been waiting for this for months and months, but I'm a little scared because the last German electronic music album that I listened to was horrifically bad, and that was VNV Nation. And no, they're not German. I've always thought of them as a German band, but they're English. I understand Ronan Harris is not German, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, Death Stars, I'm really excited to listen to that. I'm going to be reacting to that, and that's probably the police are calling to tell me that we need to end it right now. So we'll do that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all. We will see you all next time for the next Metallica album, which we're going to be doing, which is probably Load.
Yeah.
Unless Chris wants to do Death Magnetic or Hardwired with us, other Chris, and before he has a very major life event coming up here in the next. Actually, it's due to happen in the next week.
Oh, don't worry, he'll have plenty of free time.
He says he will, but I don't think so. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But more likely than not, it will be Chris Parker and I doing Load. We'll see when that comes out. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time.